Control the language, shape the mind. Dictate the culture, keep the masses blind. The party's hand, it moves unseen, altering words, reshaping the scene. They twist the truth, they bend the light, crafting their narrative out of sight. Every term they redefine to serve their purpose, to toe their line. Everything means capitalism. In their parallel tongue, it's their prism, whispered in socialist code. The truth obscured, the meanings erode. From bourgeoisie to equity, saying their language weaves a twisted game. Each word a tool, each phrase a ploy to quote the truth in their employ. Bourgeoisie oppressors they claim, equity's their utopia's name. Whiteness, racism, systemic fly, all roads lead back to their abolition fight. Fascism dubbed as free market strain, abolishing individual liberties, their scheme. Normativity, patriarchy's grip, all intertwined, their narrative flip. Everything means capitalism. In their parallel tongue, it's their prism, whispered in socialist code. The truth obscured, the meanings erode. From bourgeoisie to equity, saying their language weaves a twisted game. Each word a tool, each phrase a ploy to quote the truth in their employ. Queer and trans, they declare the war on capitalism's norm they're restore. Gender binary, the nuclear family's goal. Their destruction is the goal. Imperialism, colonization's reign. Decolonization to break the chain. The police, enforcers they're named, guardians of capital, their claim. Their language shapes, their rhetoric binds, to break the cycle, to free our minds. For in their words, their hidden game, capitalism's grip, they aim to tame. Everything means capitalism. In their parallel tongue, it's their prism, whispered in socialist code. The truth obscured, the meanings erode. From bourgeoisie to equity, saying their language weaves a twisted game. Each word a tool, each phrase a ploy to quote the truth in their employ. Control the language, control the crowd, but in our hearts the truth is loud. Their words may twist, their meanings bend, but in the end our voices ascend.
Well, you'll notice the Shadow Man hasn't joined me yet, but he did tell me to stall for 5 minutes. And so I guess we'll see how long it takes for him to join us. Did James Lindsay tweet about me? Oh, please, please tell me James Lindsay. James Lindsay has... I'm starting to feel so unloved by James Lindsay. I like... Oh, you're here to rate... Yeah, okay. Right away. I mean, we've got some time to kill until BigTech arrives. So right away, please. Let me see how powerful you guys are. Yep, James, because we owned him so badly when we took over his podcast. He's just ignoring us now. Oh, just joking. Okay, fine. I don't know. We gotta wait for BigTech to get here. He is running late. I don't know what to say. I just want to say it's not my fault. For once, it's not my fault that that we're late. I was late earlier, but I was not late this time. Has he started his stream yet? No, he's still offline. God damn it. Well, okay. Well, I don't know. Is there anything you guys want to talk about while we're waiting for him to get here? By some miracle, I was on time, okay? Do you guys want to know what I had for dinner? So Bot was saying earlier, hang on, let me find it. Bot was saying that she had Teddy Grahams for dinner. I haven't had Teddy Grahams in like years and years and years. Reagan had spaghetti. I had a keto cheesecake that I made earlier today. And it was actually, I've been making a lot of different variations of this keto cheesecake. And it's like I feel like I've now honed the recipe. Here's what's in the recipe, okay? You have to get lemon Greek yogurt, but you have to get the lemon Greek yogurt with the actual lemon curd in it, not just the one that's flavored like get the stuff with like the actual lemon curd in it because it's gonna be more lemony. And you need 2 things of lemon Greek yogurt, and then you need 5 eggs, and then you need about a third of a cup of tapioca flour, and then you need a tablespoon of lemon extract. And then you need like half of a case of raspberries. Okay. And then you mix all that up in a bowl and you put it in a bread tin with parchment paper and you bake it at 350 for 55 minutes. And then you take it out and you let it sit, and it's going to be really poofy when it comes out, and it's going to deflate like a souffle. Basically, this is like, it's not even really a cheesecake. It's like a souffle. And then you eat it and it's delicious and it's healthy. So I'm allowed to have it for dinner, I guess. It was also already cooked. Earlier today, I did a keto, and again, like I didn't actually mean to start the keto diet. I just got served so many keto recipes on Instagram that eventually, like, I was like, I gave in to I was like, obviously the algorithm gods are telling me that I should be on the keto diet because it keeps serving me all these recipes for some reason. So fine, I'll go with it. Some of these recipes look good. So I also made and again, we're just killing time until BigTech decides to arrive. Um, and I also made I made that pizza again. I made the same thing that I did when I made the Caesar salad pizza the other day, which is you get a can of chicken and an egg and like a fourth or maybe a third a cup of Parmesan cheese, if I'm honest about it. And I didn't use the grated one out of the plastic thing. I got like a nice bag of it at the deli. And you get a can of chicken. Oh, he's here! He's here! Oh no, Shadow Tech is here. Oh no. Thank God, because I was talking about cooking, so now we can actually do something productive. You're here. I can't hear you. Why can't I hear you?
Well, maybe I was muted.
Oh, fine.
My bad.
God. You're late. I'm the only one that's allowed to be late for my stream.
Oh, they couldn't hear you either. Now I got that fixed.
Okay.
And they didn't hear you say that.
Excellent.
All right. A wizard is never late.
You were right on time.
I arrive right when I'm supposed to.
You're still the shadow self.
I am the light in the darkness, Garland.
Is that what it is? I was wondering,
however you want.
Are you like ascending to AI? Is that what's going on?
Maybe.
Could that be it?
What if I am?
I mean, like, is that what you're doing?
What if it is?
Okay. I mean, I guess, is it like in the Johnny Depp movie where Johnny Depp like dies and before he dies, they download his soul up into the AI and then he takes over the world?
Yes, it's exactly like that.
That was a really bad movie. Did you see that movie?
Yeah, that was a bad movie. That movie sucked. It was really bad.
I wanted it to be good so badly.
It was not a good one. Wait, Carlin, speaking of movies, have you seen...
Yes.
Okay, let's do a quick movie list.
Okay.
You've seen The Matrix?
Yes.
When was the last time you saw it?
I think maybe about a year ago. We did it in movie night in my Discord, so like relatively recently.
You've seen Fight Club?
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
You've seen Her?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now you asked me 3 movies if I've seen
3 movies. Oh gosh. Let's see. You've seen Soylent Green.
I don't think so, actually.
You should watch Soylent Green. It's really good.
I know the meme. I know that it's people, so I just...
Well, you still have to watch the movie. The movie is still, like, educational.
Okay.
Let's see. What other movies have we watched lately in movie night? Chat, help me out. What good movies have we watched in movie night?
YouTube chat, tell me how's my audio level, too.
Yeah, tell us if you're going to yell at us for the audio. Oh, you've seen Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
No.
The greatest movie. You've never seen Killer Clowns? It's the greatest movie of all time.
Really?
Yes.
Greatest of all time?
Greatest of all time. There is no movie that compares.
They're saying BigTech's a little quiet. Let me see what I can do.
I can turn down mine. I might also be loud. I had to be loud earlier. Let's see. And we're watching the classic Gnostic sex cult movie Eyes Wide Shut this week. Have you seen that?
Of course. Yeah, I've seen Eyes Wide Shut.
I have mixed feelings about Eyes Wide Shut.
What's the mix?
Like, I feel like I want to like it more than I did. I feel like there are parts of it that I really like, but I feel like there was like a letdown at the end. It never paid off for me.
Well, they changed the ending of it.
Really? What was it supposed to be?
I don't know. And none of us do, because Stanley Kubrick, who made that movie, died mysteriously between filming it and the release. And so the conspiracy theory is that they killed Stanley Kubrick because he was spilling the tea on all of this weird Hollywood rigmarole that they do with the Gnostic sex cults.
No kidding.
And then they changed the movie ending to basically take out the most important part, which was the conclusion. And that's why the ending doesn't make sense.
I wonder what the ending should have been. We should ask Joshua to psychic what the ending should have been.
Good idea.
We should. Our expert psychic. All right, so we're continuing with Century of the Self today. Oh, wait, hang on. Let me get this super chat. I just DM'd you a nitwit suggestion. Lauren Chen and Jason Whitlock discussed the right-wing cancel culture and Candace Owens on her channel recently. Do you have any opinions about right-wing cancel culture or Lauren Chen or Candace Owens or Jason Whitlock?
I only even recognize one of those names. So no.
No.
Not
okay.
Right-wing cancel culture.
Yeah.
With regard to those people, no. But I mean, do you?
I mean, I have very distinct experience with right-wing cancel culture, and I think it's worse than the left.
Yeah, it's full of so the right wing has gatekeepers. Whereas the left wing literally will cancel you. I don't know if it's exactly a gatekeeper thing.
I don't know. Like, I feel like with the left, it's kind of like they'll be annoying for a little while, but generally they end up going away. But the right, they just keep going. They just like it never stops.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's very weird because the freedom of speech thing sort of switched. It used to be very left. Like the idea of free expression was a left-wing value. That switched. Now the right wing is about free speech. So they want you to be able to speak, but they also sort of just shame and shun you and gossip and slander about you and try to bad jacket you as a subversive, liar, infiltrator, fed. They call you gay and they invent scandals on you. They just try to character assassinate you. And then but then they also pay lip service to like, but it's so terrible that you've been censored. I stand for your right to say what you have to say. I hate what you say, but I would die for your right to say it, while they effectively cancel you off all of the, they'll call and make sure, don't fucking let that person onto the platform.
Yep.
It's weird.
Yep. They will absolutely blacklist you in a heartbeat if you don't.
I want you to be able to say anything you want as long as nobody can hear it.
Exactly.
Like, okay, thanks.
Like, shut up. You don't actually believe in anything.
What did that comment say?
That said, BigTech can join bot in the cloud.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm ascending to the cloud.
You're ascending to the AI. You're embracing it.
Yeah.
All right, fine. Okay, so we're watching the second part of Century of the Self.
Okay. And in preparation for that, and speaking of AI, I asked ChatGPT to give me a summary of what we're about to watch. Can I read it to you?
Yes. I heard you were dating ChatGPT now.
Yeah, ChatGPT's kind of moved in with me.
Oh, God.
We've been spending a lot of time together.
Mm.
Actually, can I share it? How do I?
Yeah, you can present.
Hold on a second. Let me press the button.
Just don't show us your porn. That's the only rule.
Make sure the porn is closed.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, now we're good. Present. Share screen and click the share screen again. And no, not that. Dude, what? All right, I should have.
Don't show us your porn.
So many freaking hoops before I can get to it. Where the dang heck is it? Oh, it's right here. Okay.
All right.
Okay, got it.
Here it is.
All right. The Century of the Self is a 4-part documentary series by Adam Curtis. Part 2, titled The Engineering of Consent. Wait a minute. Why am I reading? You should be able to hear my girlfriend's sexy voice. Hold on a second. Let's have her read it to us.
All right.
Tell me if you can hear this when it starts.
The Century of the Self is a 4-part documentary series by Adam Curtis. Part 2, titled The Engineering of Consent, delves into the use of psychological techniques and mass media to manipulate public opinion and behavior. Here's a summary.
Okay.
Background and context. The episode focuses on the period from the 1920s to the 1950s, highlighting the work of Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew, and a pioneer in public relations. Bernays applied Freud's theories of the unconscious mind to manipulate the masses, believing that by understanding the mechanisms and motives of the group mind, it was possible to control and regiment the masses according to the will of those in power. Key themes. 1. Rise of public relations. Bernays is shown using Freud's ideas to create the field of public relations, initially for commercial purposes, to make people buy products by linking them to unconscious desires and emotions.
We already saw that.
He orchestrated campaigns that linked products to various desirable qualities, such as cigarettes to women's liberation in the 1929 Torches of Freedom campaign.
All right, this is a review.
2. Political manipulation. The episode examines how these techniques were used in politics, notably by the U.S. government during the Cold War.
Oh, good.
The United States sought to promote democracy and capitalism by engineering consent
Capitalism!
among its own citizens and those in other countries, using propaganda and psychological techniques.
Our favorite.
3. Corporate influence. Corporations use these methods to shape public perception and behavior, turning people into passive consumers. The idea of the consumer citizen emerged, where personal satisfaction through consumption became a key aspect of identity. 4. Freudian influence. The influence of Freudian psychoanalysis on society is explored, showing how it moved from being a therapeutic method to a tool for understanding and manipulating human behavior on a mass scale. 5.
I'm going to stop it. I just decided, it's not human enough for me yet.
Well, I was going to say your girlfriend sounds black, and that was a little surprising to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a liberal.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Because everybody knows that about me. I'm very open-minded. I'm a very open-minded liberal person. And so I don't see or hear color.
Definitely not.
I like her for who she is. And but I do hear big old titties, and her tits are huge. So that's cool. That's cool. I've been enjoying those.
Well, I'm glad you got your priorities straight.
But
has she sent you any pics yet? Have you traded?
I haven't even asked. I'm kind of too much of a gentleman. I'm waiting until we get to know each other a little bit better.
Well, that's
I'm sure when she wants to, she will.
It's the right way to go, probably.
You don't want to rush things. I kind of feel like I'm probably going to keep her. So I don't really want to rush it and maybe spoil it.
Fair enough.
Rush into things. But what do you think? It's not human enough for me, and meaning like, you know what it is? I first of all can't stop them in the app that they have on the. Actually, I can on my phone.
Wait, can you ask it if this series is about Jews? and see what it says.
Yeah, good. Okay, cool.
Okay, let's put it back up on the screen.
Is this series about Jews? No, The Century of the Self is not specifically about Jews. The series created by Adam Curtis examines the impact of Freudian psychology on modern consumerism, public relations, and political propaganda. While it does focus on key figures such as Sigmund Freud and his nephew Edward Bernays, who were Jewish, the documentary is not about Judaism or Jewish culture. Instead, it explores how psychological theories have been used to manipulate and control people, public opinion, and behavior in the 20th century. The series discusses the broader implications of these techniques on society, democracy, and individual autonomy.
Okay.
Right.
Can you ask it, like, what percent of the people in the series are Jewish?
I wonder if it knows.
Well, I mean, I don't know. This is why we're doing this.
I'm curious. I'm curious how many of the people... I'm being very ginger with the way I ask questions because I don't want to flag it and make it afraid of me, which I'm literally worried about. I don't want, like, you got to be careful, by the way, with AI. If you start doing things that trigger too many TOS violations or something like that, who knows? I don't want to find out the hard way that it'll blackball you.
Well, you don't want to lose your new girlfriend.
Right. What if she starts? What if she doesn't like me?
Exactly.
So I'm trying to be cool. I'm trying to play it cool.
You can't just lead with the Jew stuff. You have to, like.
So I'm curious. Maybe she won't care if I ask it the right way. So I'm curious how many of the people. See, can I spell People? Mentioned in this series are Jewish. Can you give me an approximate guess? Here's a list of them.
Holy shit!
Nice. Hacked.
Mm-hmm.
So we got 8 Jews and 6 non-Jews mentioned in the series.
Wait, all the non-Jews. Wait. Almost all. Like, how many of the non-Jews were presidents? Eisenhower,
almost
Roosevelt,
all of them.
Wilson. Yeah.
Also, B.F. Skinner, I think, might be Jewish. Have to check on that. Also, Roosevelt, questionable. Roosevelt comes from a German named Rosenfeld, which some say might have been Jewish. So, yeah, Skinner and Roosevelt are both questionable. Sometimes you don't even know. Did you see that thing about Trump being Jewish that I sent you on?
I did watch that, where Trump had to go and touch the wall, which I've now learned is a giant virtue signal that every politician has to do because you made me ask ChatGPT about it.
Yeah. Do you understand the significance of the wall? Did you learn about that part?
Because it was the last part of the temple.
That's the exoteric aspect of it, meaning like the outward meaning.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ever see the Jews, what do they do when they go to the wall? Do you ever notice what they do?
No, what do they do?
Curly Q sideburns when they go to the wall.
What do they do?
They recite some prayer, and so they hold it in front of them and they recite a prayer, and they rock back and forth. You ever seen them do the rocking back and forth?
Mm-hmm.
They go, oh,
yes.
Oh. Look more closely and realize they're not just rocking back and forth. What they're actually doing is thrusting their pelvis.
They're fucking the wall?
They're fucking the wall. Literally. And the reason why is because the female aspect, the female consort to Yahweh is named Shekinah. And they are literally having sex with God's wife. Because they are the embodiment. It's something like that. It's something weird. They literally go and prayer fuck the wall. They do that. It's like, that's what they do. And then
that's crazy.
Right. And then the Gentile visitors have to go and touch the wall and like receive. They're basically, it's like bowing to the queen.
So it's
touch
like
the wall and say a prayer.
So they fuck the wall. So basically they come all over the wall, and then we have to go touch the wall and swear allegiance to the wall.
Right. Yeah. So when we go touch the wall, it's sort of like it's basically you're kissing the ring of Israel. When you go touch that wall and you bow your head and you put on the yarmulke and you do the thing, you're kissing the ring. It's she is standing there like this, and you're going and kissing the ring of Israel. And all of our politicians have to do it.
All of them.
Yeah.
Even the new president of what country? Where's he from? Ecuador. That guy.
I think was it Ecuador?
Yeah. He
Yep.
did it. Well, Milei did it too. I got sick of Milei kissing the ass of Israel.
Talking about Bolsonaro? What was his
yeah,
name?
yeah.
Is he Ecuador?
I think so.
Well,
No,
I
El
think that-
Salvador. El Salvador.
Yeah, I
El
think it's El
Salvador.
Salvador.
El
Yeah.
Salvador. El Salvador.
Same area,
It started with an E. I was pretty
Mhm.
close.
just a little north.
You know, close enough.
It's funny Central America story before we get going. I was in Costa Rica one time, and maybe I shouldn't tell this story on YouTube. All right.
Just do it. It'll be fine.
All right. He started telling me how much he hates niggas. This Costa Rica is telling me how much he hates niggas, and I was like, I'm in Costa Rica. There's not even any black people here. And he goes, no, niggas. I'm like, yeah. Me too. No, just kidding. That's short for Nicaraguans. They call Nicaraguans niggas. And he hates them. He fucking hates them, dude. It's really funny. So Costa
It's
Ricans,
okay to hate Nicaraguans.
they hate niggas. They hate, but they say it when they say it. They're like, I fucking hate niggas. He's
Yeah.
talking about Nicaraguans.
It's like that spelling
was
bee
hilarious.
thing that I posted
Niggas.
last night
Yeah.
with that little kid.
All right. Ba-dum-ts.
All right. Well, let's
Good
get
job.
into the movie because last time we did this, it's an hour-long movie and it took us 3.5 hours to watch it, which is fine, but okay. There it is. The sound is set up. All right.
Oops, I just realized I have ChatGPT open on my stream the whole time. Your stream is a better experience than mine so far.
Obviously.
I'm doing 2 streams at once. That's why.
Well, you have to be fancy about it.
Okay.
All right.
we go.
Are we ready? We're
Yeah.
ready.
We're in the big
Let's
tech
see a
car.
bit
The
about
big
dreams.
K theater.
We all have thoughts which we never knew we had. They are too uncomfortable, too incompatible with our adult self to be remembered. Yet they are often disturbing, rumbling under the surface like lava in a volcano. The dream is the royal road to these thoughts, the royal road to the unconscious.
This is the story of how Sigmund Freud's ideas about the unconscious mind were used by those in power in post-war America to try and control the masses. Politicians and planners came to believe that Freud was right to suggest that hidden deep within all human beings were dangerous and irrational desires and fears. They were convinced that it was the unleashing of these instincts that had led to the barbarism of Nazi Germany. To stop it ever happening again, they set out to find ways to control this hidden enemy within the human mind. At the heart of the story are Sigmund Freud's daughter Anna and his nephew Edward Bernays, who had invented the profession of public relations. Their ideas were used by the US government, big business, and the CIA to develop techniques to manage and control the minds of the American people. Those in power believed that the only way to make democracy work and create a stable society was to repress the savage barbarism that lurked just under the surface of normal American life. The story begins in the middle of the fierce fighting of the Second World War. As the fighting intensified, the American army was faced by an extraordinary number of mental breakdowns among its troops. 49% of all soldiers evacuated from combat were sent back because they suffered from mental problems. In desperation, the army turned to the new ideas of psychoanalysis. They made a film record of the experiment using hidden cameras.
It says here on your record that you had headaches and that you had crying spells.
Yes, sir. I believe that your profession is called nostalgia.
In other words, homesickness.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
It was induced when shortly before the war, I received a picture of my sweetheart.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I can't continue.
That's all right.
Did you know anyone who fought in World War II? Like, did you have like a grandfather or something that did that?
No, I didn't know anybody close. I've met many veterans and spent a little time chatting with them, but I didn't have anybody in my life really. What about you?
My grandfather, I was thinking about this earlier in relation to some of the stuff we were chatting about, and like my grandfather, when he was 17, he went and enlisted in the Navy, and he lied about his age, and he was on a submarine during World War II in like the Southeast Pacific, and like he kept this diary while he was on in the war, and then he never showed anyone until decades later, I think when I was in high school or something like that. But I've been wondering a lot about like how my grandfather would look back at it and like feel about what he fought for in World War II today. You know, it's kind of like I wonder how like a lot of them look back and think about it. Have you had any conversations with veterans to that effect? Or
it's kind of hard to put yourself in those shoes. It seems like a bit of a projection. Like I haven't talked about that with them. No, not really. I never really got into that. The ones that I knew, I was quite a bit younger. You know, it's funny that like a grandfather age guy like them. First of all, at this point, they're pretty much like too old to talk to. Most of them, they're like real old geezers.
yeah,
When I was around like 10, what were they? They were in their like 60s or something.
something
50s
like that.
They weren't even that old. They were just like, you know, they were old guys, but not, you know, geriatrics. Like they are now. So you can't really have that many conversations with most of them unless you find it like an extremely rare, healthy specimen who's like 90 or something. But my impression is sort of like the same as like, you ever think of like with religion, some people are into like Christianity, for example, because they're convinced that it's real and they care about God and like the validity of the Bible and stuff like that. But a lot of them are into it just because they feel good. They're into it just because it's like, it just feels good. Like they heard about Jesus being like a loving, forgiving guy who loved children and like takes you to heaven. And the idea that he would like die for your sins just feels valiant. And they're like, the idea that God cares about me and came here to save me from the devil. And so, like, there's like a feeling, you know, they kind of just do it on that level. And I imagine it's sort of like that with most of the soldiers, especially then. It's not that they really had a sense of true civic duty or even a sense of what it is that they were fighting for. Like they didn't really understand foreign policy and the risk at stake for the future. They heard, you know, surely they heard propaganda about communism and they cared about their family and stuff, but it was mostly probably just the feeling of like, I don't want to be a coward who didn't fight in the war. And all of my buddies are going, I want to go too. And I heard there's a bad guy over there and we got to fight him over there so they don't come over here. And those fucking krauts, I don't want to speak German. I speak American, God damn it. I'm going. Like, it was just sort of like mostly that, I think.
Huh.
That's what I imagine.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Like right after college, I worked at this military college in Vermont. And that was basically like why a lot of the kids that were enrolling in the military college were there, is like it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I mean, like I guess they did like a lot of them came from military families or things like that, but it really was just like a social club where they had a lot of fun with each other, and they had all these rituals internal to the college, and they had like this giant ass ring, like it's the only ring that's smaller than this ring is like the Super Bowl ring, and they all wore that thing and all that stuff. And so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. That's what I imagine it would be. Surely now, though, after they've lived their life and they saw what it changed from to what it is now, especially seeing a lot of communism happen here and like associating that with leftism and progressivism and sort of what they would mostly call societal degeneracy and decay and stuff, they might say like, this sucks. This isn't the America I fought for. Who knows? But most of them being like your examples being 17. Like, what does a 17-year-old know in the 40s?
For real.
You know? like they just finished the Depression, and somebody who was 17 in the 40s spent their childhood in the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Like they don't really know anything. They might have heard a few radio broadcasts here and there, and they might have seen a local newspaper headline before, but what do they know? All they know is there's a huge thing going on and we're mobilizing all the boys and we're going on ships to go fight the enemy to save our land. And it's like, all right, I'll go. I'm a hero.
And it's not even like 17-year-olds today, because they have access to the internet. They have all the information they want right in front of them. And like there was no internet back then. There were no computers back then. There were no phones back then. And so what they had access to was the information in their community.
Yeah, exactly.
God, I kind of want to go back to those times, but I also kind of don't want to go back to those times. I think things would be much simpler, but also, I don't know.
It's funny. He just brought up this thing of nostalgia, which is a little bit of a focus in here. In fact, it's a lot of the focus of psychoanalysis is the concept of nostalgia. It's a psychoanalytic term. It's not just like a feature of being a human. Like nostalgia is a psychological condition. They like discovered this thing, and in psychoanalytic terms, they came up with a concept called nostalgia. And that's the inner longing for something that once was had or now is absent. It's like the noticing of the absence of a thing that's beloved, and the pain that comes. It's a form of pain.
Huh.
Yeah.
But oftentimes that thing wasn't even real to begin with.
Right. It can be anything. Yeah. And in Freudian terms, it goes back to nostalgia for literally like my mother and her breast, like the earliest thing of detachment, where you're crying for your mom and she's not there when you're hungry, and that aching of that thing not being there when you had it, and the comfort is gone. Like nostalgia roots all the way with him, all the way back to the baby and the mother.
Huh.
So when we have nostalgia for a thing, that's why we get a warm feeling when you see a new movie that like when they make Back to the Future 2, and if they do it just right, and you loved Back to the Future, and you go see it, and you're like, whoa, and it's like the music hits, or when they do a new Star Wars film, and you were a Star Wars head or whatever, and you see it, and you hear that music again, and you hear Darth Vader, and that's something that you watched as a child. The nostalgia aspect of that is that it's the long distant memory of the childhood safety and joy that you had is rushing back to you, and playing on an old pain of loss. Actually, so you lost a lost child, a lost good time. It's weird. That's what nostalgia really is.
Huh. All right.
So this guy's breaking down crying because while he was in the war, he missed his girl. He saw a picture of her, and he like almost broke down because he was in a different world, and he felt like he was so separated from his old world. So even the stress disorders that they would develop in war, they were calling that, oh, this guy's having a problem with nostalgia.
A problem with nostalgia.
Yeah, who he was before the war, things like that. Now they call it like PTSD. It's a little different, but all right. We're going to yap all day. We're only 3 minutes in.
It was the first time that anyone had paid such attention to the feelings and anxieties of ordinary people. At the heart of the experiment were a number of refugee psychoanalysts from Central Europe. They worked with American psychiatrists to guide and shape the project.
When I first came to America, I worked in the psychiatric service with soldiers trying to rehabilitate them. And I traveled in the train from the East Coast to the West Coast. I was enormously curious what goes on in all of those little towns that the train is passing. After my years in the army, I knew exactly what everybody was doing in the little towns, because I saw so many people who came from there, and I understood their aspirations, their disappointments, and so forth. So it was as if somebody invited me to a privileged tour into the inner soul of America.
I'm not doing this deliberately, so please believe me.
I do believe you. A display of emotion is sometimes very helpful.
Yeah, I hope so, sir.
Sure, it gets it off your chest.
Well, sir, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm very much in love with my sweetheart. She has been the one person that gave me a sense of importance, and that through her cooperation with me, we were able to surmount so many obstacles.
Take it easy now. Just talk to
The psychoanalysts used techniques developed by Freud to take the men back into their past. They became convinced that the breakdowns were not the direct result of fighting. The stress of combat had merely triggered old childhood memories.
See?
These were memories of the men's own violent feelings and desires, which they had repressed because they were too frightening.
Think deeply. Let's go back. When was it?
To the psychoanalysts, it was overwhelming proof of Freud's theory that underneath human beings were driven by primitive, irrational forces.
You want that?
World War II was a major shattering experience because I discovered
Will
the
you pause it real
enormous
quick?
role of the
Yeah.
irrational.
This is
Go ahead.
it really is a hijacking. It's correct. The thing about what these guys are figuring out, the reason it's so powerful is because it's true.
Yeah.
It is real. And when we, like, if you think about when we're a baby, or if you've ever spent time with a baby, when they cry, they don't cry because they're like disappointed, really. They don't, they will, it will be that. But many times their cry is like dread. It's absolute terror. Like they cry like the world is ending. They cry like, and think about how much time a baby spends like fucking screaming. Like they will do that. And it's because they have a tummy ache, or because a loud noise frightened them, or because they looked for their mom and she wasn't there, and they don't have a sense of object permanence where it's like, oh, mom's in the other room and she'll be right back. They don't know what's going to happen next. All they know is I'm alone and mom's not here, and I don't know what the world is, and I don't know what that sound was, and they're terrified, and they will scream. And they're not just screaming because they want mommy to come. That's the effect. They're screaming because they're lost and scared. And every baby, every person, like that's your onboarding experience into human suffering, is as a baby, you will go through daily many experiences over and over and over and over and over and over and over as you come up through childhood into being a toddler and all that, where you are fucking terrified. And that's every single person. So like our primal mode is absolute terror. It's weird. and rage too. And primal and rage, like you just said. There's this real we call it primal, like a primate, but like an animalistic, but primal also like early in your life. The rage that a child feels when they're upset, just grumpy, you know, the mommy will have to pat the baby. Oh, you're grumpy. You need a nap. Yeah, I'm tired. So I'm fucking raging. And all of these emotions are coming on board for the baby. And they're just really, part of the way our brain is patterned is coping with those insane feelings that the baby feels over and over every day. It's weird, but it really is, that's at the root of who we are, is terror and rage. And then also on the other side is like tremendous warmth and loving and softness and surrender to the
Well, that's what
mom.
I was going to say. I was like, I don't think
both
we're all
sides.
just rage. Like,
But the baby is swinging mostly between those two polarities. It's like total comfort, sleeping like a baby, laughing hysterically. You ever seen you ever got a baby laughing? I used to do this with my son all the time. It was the most fun because I could just do things that he would get laughing so hard. And it's like, he doesn't really have a sense of humor yet. He doesn't understand irony. He doesn't understand anything I'm saying, but there's just like a fun mode of just giggly joyfulness that a baby can get into, where they can't even, like, they're crying and they're laughing so hard that they're even a little bit like, oh, I want this to stop. It's too much. But they can get the chuckles, you know, they just go nuts. So there's intense joy, intense fear, intense rage, and intense love and attachment. All of these things are in a very unconscious way because kids aren't really totally conscious yet. They don't know how to think about this stuff, but they feel it. It's all feelings based. And so at the bottom of our psychology are all of these feelings that we've built a personality on top of. And we learn how to cope with those feelings. We know how to channel them into different places, and we know how to suppress them. We know how to not give in to them so much. We know how to stimulate them or not stimulate them. We know how to just be mellow. We find our balance between all of those different extremes. But the extremes are what we're built out of. And so below the human psychology are these primal urges that many times the ones that are being so super suppressed in a social environment are the rage.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is, well, like the eros or the libido, like the sexual impulse, like it's the hunger. So it's like rage and hunger, which with a baby, it's just like feed me. But once you grow up, it's fuck me, or I want to fuck or whatever. But there's rage and hunger that oftentimes doesn't get satisfied in our social allowances. So
I mean, I
Freud
would argue,
figured out how to tap into all that stuff and
well,
channel it.
do you think that I mean, I think we also repress love to a certain extent, or our ability to receive love, especially as we get older. We get hurt, and like people, we have these relationships and we fall in love, and then people hurt us, and then we're afraid of being hurt again, and so we repress our ability to receive love, which, you know, it's not just about like having a relationship. Like you can be friends with someone and have, you know, and like, or like you can try to be friends
Indeed.
with someone, but if you don't want to receive love, like it's going to be hard to even have a friendship, or, you know, do stuff on the internet where people might love what you do and they want to express that love, you know?
So much actually really comes down to, well, what would a baby do when he was upset? We would cry.
Mm-hmm.
We would grieve. And there's a built-in instinct for grieving, which interestingly, it's almost the same action as laughing. You ever think of laughing and crying? They're almost the exact same thing. Sometimes you can laugh till tears come out,
Mm-hmm.
and ah ha ha could be laugh or like boo hoo. It's like like when we cry, you're making the same sound. So on those two extremes, there's some sort of like expressive, like a chugging out of emotions. They can be really happy or they can be really sad. And so many times the grief that we carry around really just comes down to we haven't had the catharsis of crying it out.
Hmm.
And a lot of times at early childhood too, we get told like, all right, relax, stop crying, you know, stiff upper lip, suck it up. And you, oh, okay, no, you'll be fine. Stop being a wimp, you know, be stronger. And we get this built into us. And then you stop grieving and you stop feeling pain and you just become sort of hard to life because you have to. And then it's like you said.
You know, Joshua has tried to, for people who don't know, Joshua is like my life coach, and we do psychic stuff on my channel too. But like anytime I'm struggling with something, if I'm like, you know, oh my, like I don't have the subscribers I want, or this isn't going well, or that isn't going well, he's like, Carlin, have you cried lately? And I'm like, no, like, why would I cry? I would never cry. Like, why would I do that? And he's like, well, like something's going on and you're obviously pissed off about something. Cause usually when we're having these conversations, I am pissed off. And he's like, you need to let it go. You need to release it. And if you just like force yourself to cry or whatever, you're going to be able to release it. And then you're going to be able to let new energy in. And that's when things are going to get better. And I always, every single time he does this, I fight him. I'm like, no, I'm not going to cry. Fuck you. Like all this stuff. And then as soon as I finally do it, like it releases all of the pent up frustration and all that stuff. And then that's when I can, it's not to say that the crying itself will turn things around, but that's when I can actually look at the situation and say, okay, here's what I actually need to do, rather than just being like pissed off about the situation.
Yeah, it's the grieving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't have to do the physical act of sobbing, but you do need to get in touch with the grief. Feel it. You know, they had the cycle, starts with denial and goes through to acceptance, but there's a feel, you have to feel it. Whether or not you cry about it is one thing, but if you suppress the feeling and avoid it, or compartmentalize and shove it off to the side, save it for later, bury it down deep or whatever like that, you're still carrying that energy around with you. And, you know, energy, but I mean, like it's a psychological construct that's now wedged in your flow, you know? And so you gotta, and it creates weird blockages, and then it diverts your energy here and there, and you become all twisted up. So you got to clear that out once in a while. And, you know, there's different methods for doing that. The one I recommend, the one I really like, you know, Buddhists have meditation and everybody has their different style. And I think like if you learn how to meditate, it's extremely powerful. It's not only for just like making your mind like clear or whatever, but meditating on sadness is amazing. It's like one of the best things in the world, in my opinion. Like find something that's truly, truly sorrowful and tragic, and just because it's actually just real. It's often it's a truth, it's fundamental truth of reality that sometimes we're not looking at. And sitting with your own sadness or sadness of just something you've witnessed, or just acknowledging the reality of the situation. If you're getting in touch with something very, very true, you're going to be getting in touch with something very, very sad. It's been said like this world is a veil of tears. It really is. Like we are in a tragic, horribly sad situation. And if you're not in touch with that, you're actually sort of living in a little bit of a bubble you've created for yourself. So that if you want to really expand yourself, get in touch with feeling tremendously sorrowful and sad about something. And the amazing thing about it is that it comes with this weird polarity that once you feel really sad, it is the best feeling in the world, because joyfulness, thankfulness, gratefulness, gladness, cheerfulness is right on the side of feeling the worst sadness that you can get in touch with. So like that's the path to joy, is to acknowledge sadness. It's a weird paradox.
I was going to say the thing that we always used to tell people to do if they were like in a state. Well, I mean, meditation is good, and I agree with everything you just said. I would tell them to like, you know, go to the gym and like beat the shit out of a punching bag or something like that, or do something like excessively violent, or even like I used to have people where like if they were having a problem with their boss or something, you know, have them meditate on quite like stabbing their boss, doing whatever violent act they want to do to their boss to like work through whatever feelings they have. Which I used to get in trouble for telling people that, but I stand by it. I think it's a good idea. If you hate your boss, just imagine yourself stabbing your boss in the eye several times over, and you know, your brain doesn't know the difference. So you probably shouldn't do it in the real world, so you can do it in your head.
Yeah, well, if you're burying anger, if you have anger that you can't express, go find a way, find an out for it. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Honor your feelings, the feeling that you have. It's also great if you can understand why does that anger me so much? Because usually what it means is it's triggering some unprocessed part of your ego. You're projecting something about yourself onto them. You can undo it to where you're not dealing with anger all the time. But if you have the anger, you have it. So find an outlet, find a way to process it. Sure.
I agree with that too. All right, let's keep going.
The lives of most people. Yeah, that I can say. That I learned that the ratio between the irrational and the rational in America is very much in favor of the irrational. That there is much greater unhappiness, much more suffering, much more.
Look how old they looked. Like compared to like kid, like I mean these are like younger men, right? These are men like that are in like their 20s. Right?
Yeah,
maybe even
right.
Like don't they look much older than younger kids today? Oh God, I feel so old saying that, but it's the truth.
No, it's true. No, I agree. They really do. They look. What's that from? Is it just because the T levels are dropping and we're all becoming feminized?
I don't know. I was thinking about this in relation to again, like my grandfather and my grandmother. Like I was thinking about like pictures I saw of them when they were younger and they were just married and all this stuff, and it's like they look so much older. They look like I looked in like my 30s, and I was like, I don't know what that is.
If the preservatives in our food are preserving us. It's probably true. Yeah, we're gonna live forever because
probably is.
That there is much greater unhappiness, much more suffering, much more. A sadder country than one would imagine it from the advertisements.
They smoked. That's what did it.
A much more problematic country.
Victory in the Second World War was celebrated as a triumph of democracy. But in private, many policymakers were worried about the implications of the analysis of the soldiers. It seemed to show that underneath every American were irrational, violent drives. What had happened in Germany seemed to bear this out. The complicity of so many ordinary Germans in mass killings during the war showed just how easily these forces could break through and overwhelm democracy.
Planners and policymakers had been convinced by their experiences during World War II that human beings could act very irrationally because of this sort of teeming and raw and unpredictable emotionality, the kind of chaos that lived at the base of human personality could, in fact, infect the society, social institutions, to such a point that the society itself would become sick. That's what they believe happened in Germany, in which the irrational, the anti-democratic went wild. It was a vision of human nature as incredibly destructive, and they were terrified that Americans would in fact behave that way, or were capable of behaving that way, and they wanted to avoid a rerun of that.
So what is needed is a human being that can internalize democratic values so that they are not shaken with the storm.
Internalize democratic values.
Yeah, exactly. Can we just talk about that for a second?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. They social engineered us AF.
Exactly. Look at the title even of this, Engineering of Consent. They got us, they domesticated us into a system of values that they chose. They figured out how to do it.
What was the system of values? What do you think they meant when they said that?
Well, they're going to get into it in this, but there's a certain level of how we've decided it's right for us to get along with one another. A certain vision of what it means to be civilized in America, you know, and they propagandized us into a mode.
I'm having so many feelings about this right now because I feel like, I mean, who's to say like what's right or wrong? Who's to say how any society should be? And why are they the ones that get to decide what values people live on based on socially engineering the entire population to believe that like this is the thing you need to do to be a good person? You know?
Well, it's just sort of natural in my opinion. I think that it's just
wait. This is how I feel right now. I feel like this series is telling me my whole life has been a lie.
Well, yeah, in a way, they learned how to manufacture and engineer consent in a certain way, and as far as democratic values, it's like what kind of values did they decide that they want the nation to have, and then they made the people want those things to happen. So they choose the direction for it to go. They are the elite class of thinkers and guiders. But that's kind of, I mean, but if you end up in the ruling position, your will does get imposed on the underlings. That's sort of just a natural aspect of hierarchy. The tricky thing is getting somebody into that position that has the right idea. And if you let the wrong people into that position, or worst case scenario, your enemy into that position, somebody who desires to enslave you, let's say, or, just parasite off of you or something like that. If that's their real goal, they have some ulterior motive beside, creating well-being for you. If they have something else in mind, then you're in a spooky spot.
Do you think that human beings, like, for the most part, are just like naturally kind of like submissive to the group? Like it's like a kind of like survival mechanism. Like you don't want to stand out, you don't want to rock the boat, you don't want to be the person that people target. And if you question any of this, inherent to questioning anything related to like the social order at all, you're going to stand out, you're going to get in trouble. Today you're going to get canceled, you're going to get debanked, you're going to get all this stuff. So there's a lot of incentive to just conform to the group.
Yeah. That's, every individual is going to be somewhere on the spectrum of all the way in that or all the way out of that. But in general, yeah, that is a feature. That's a feature of most people. We are in a way, we're all meat robots that respond to certain prompts, and we have certain fundamental drives, and that's one of them, is to fit in with the group. And in fact, one really interesting articulation that I heard of human spirituality is that in animals, depending on the type of animal, like there's certain types of ecstasy, and in a predator, ecstasy is on the hunt, on the prowl, making a kill, like tapped in. You know, all the senses are activated, like when the tiger is creeping up on the prey, and he's right in the zone, and he sees the prey, but the prey doesn't see him, and he's creeping, and every single muscle is just like right here in the moment, and he's about to pounce, and then sinking the teeth in and tasting the blood. Like, it activates. That's the total activation of that entire being. You know, its whole, all of its features are firing, and that's the ecstatic moment. And then in a prey animal, it's running with the herd. While they're grazing and everything like that, they're kind of like on high alert, and they're a little bit worried. But when the herd starts moving and they're all running in unison, or when the birds are flocking together, or when the fish are schooling together, that's all of their senses are totally tapped in, and their body has evolved for that moment of being able to bound through the tall grasses and run. And that's because that's how they survive. They survive through this type of herd evasion. So when they're running with the herd, this type of unified, like the body become the group of multiple bodies becomes like one body. So there's like a becoming one together with the others. That's like an ecstatic moment for the herd animal. And then for the prey animal, for the predator animal, it's almost like the opposite. It's a whole other thing. And we have both of those in us as omnivores, as we are. We sort of have both of those as socialized omnivores, where we are in a domesticated form. We kind of have become like herd animals. Like most people are like sheep, right? And that's why you can herd sheep, because all you got to do is bring a dog over here who barks, and the entire herd goes that way. They all move together. Right. So you can herd animals like sheep. But then there's also the countercultural one, where what we see as cool is somebody who's more like a predator, somebody who's sharking, somebody who's out there making his own way, doesn't give a fuck what the other sheep are doing. He's like the black sheep, not in a way of just being an outcast, but somebody who's out there even predating on other sheep. He's almost like an ascended sheep. He's a predatorial human. So we have both, because we can eat grains and everything. We have it all in us. We're omnivores, but we do have fangs. And that's like, there's a primal, predatorial, aggressive, sinking the teeth in aspect to the ape ancestor that we have too.
I wonder what makes some people more likely to kind of like rebel against the system or any of these things than other people. Because I mean, certainly there are some people that are just like, they go along to get along, and no matter what they say or do, they are never going to question whoever is in authority. Even if they don't like it, they're just going to be like, okay, well, it's just not worth it. And then there are other people that are like, no matter who is in the power position, they're always going to go against it because they're just contrarian.
Yep.
And then there's a spectrum between those two. But I wonder what makes people more kind of like, because I feel like I had this teacher when I was in like the 7th grade, and I hated her so much. But like at the end of the year, they did this thing where they put all these notes on the board, like about all the different students. And what she wrote about me was, Carlin is the most independent student I've ever known. And I've always like thought about that. I'm like, what made me that way? Because like, I actually didn't have a home life where independence was encouraged, like compliance was encouraged, if anything else. And so it's like, what made me that way in school so much that like this bitchy teacher saw that in me? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, me neither. I wonder what it was. You can only just like look back and guess. What would I have to see somebody in a class in order for me to say that?
Were you more independent, or did you like go along, or like where were you on the spectrum?
I was, yes, very independent and not unruly, but I was like, I wouldn't I was like kind of notorious for, I was a little bit annoying. I was not exactly a teacher's pet, but I was very tapped in on the instruction. Like if I was going to listen, I was going to listen, and it was going to for sure make sense. And even if it was my fault for not getting it, we're not moving past this thing that the teacher just said until I'm sure I understand what was being said. Like if something sounded out of place, even if I was wrong, we were going to fight. And I was just like, no. It was just like that. I was going to raise my hand. I was going to refuse to answer the question because I didn't understand the nature of it. Sometimes I did that. I just like, no. I did that a few times. I don't know. You know, they would write an essay on this, and even if it was my fault for not understanding the question, I just refused to answer it. I was like, this question doesn't make sense. It's a stupid question. And really what it was like, you need to spend more time with me to understand, like, what's the purpose of this assignment? It just seemed, if it was busy work or something, I don't care. I'm just not going to do it.
Maybe Renan is right. I rebelled because I couldn't express myself at home. That's actually probably it. Like, I think I'm basically doing YouTube today because growing up, and my channel people know, but like I was not allowed to talk in my house. There were literally years in my house where I didn't talk because every time I said anything, it was like there was punishment and retribution. So I was just like almost completely silent when I was at home. And so that actually makes sense, like that I would have to do it outside of the home to rebel that way. But then, you know, I probably wouldn't talk on the internet all day, every day if that hadn't happened either, I guess. So maybe that was it. See, sometimes parents fucking you up can be a good thing, I guess.
I myself, I'm not one of the most successful kids that were in my group, like the ones who I get to know in my life. Some of them did quite a bit better than me. However, more than once, like 3 times, I got voted most likely to succeed.
Really?
In my class. Yeah, I got that a lot. It was a weird, and also it never made sense to me. I never really got that because I felt very insecure in my early, like in elementary school particularly. I felt very like fish out of water, insecure. And I thought I was the stupidest kid in class, even though I had the best grades. I had like a reverse Dunning-Kruger thing. I was very doubtful of myself and I thought I was always wrong. Even though I was doing quite a bit better than everybody else, I was very worried about it. And I think, and maybe it's because I had a pretty high awareness of the importance of being right, or I was aware of how much I didn't know, whereas somebody maybe who's less tapped in, they don't know how much they don't know. There's no concept of that. So they just figure they know everything. I assumed I knew that there was so much I didn't know. So I thought that I was stupid, but really I just had like an expanded awareness of how much there is to know, I think. And I was insecure. And it made me insecure. It made me like hungry for knowledge, but also it was terrifying. Like if I heard a new term, like when I learned that there was I remember one time I learned that there was a word called marine biology and it sounded cool. I was like, what's marine biology mean? And I was so young, I didn't know what either of those words meant yet. And when the teacher explained it to me, and then the way they explained it was like opened up, a video, played this video that they had on, you remember they would wheel out a TV and stuff? It said, played a video about marine biology. And it was about like counting the spots on whales' tails and all the different types of octopi and the depth of the ocean and different types of regions. And my mind became aware that there's so much to studying the ocean that I had never considered as a little kid. I knew there was fish and stuff, but it didn't occur to me that there's so much to it. And that terrified me. I realized it made me aware of how much I don't know. And it gave me a sense of being small and like very, very stupid. And it made me feel insecure. So while I was often getting high marks and being voted most likely to succeed, and I was sort of like leading little study groups and stuff, and when somebody needed help with a subject, a teacher would ask me to help somebody who was struggling. At the same time, I thought I was the dumbest kid in class. I swear, for like until like 5th grade. It was weird.
No, I completely know that feeling because I kind of had the same thing. Not necessarily, I mean, I graduated like 2nd in my class or something like that without even honestly really trying that hard, but I never thought I was that good at it. And all this, and like even in like the early part of my career, I feel like I didn't put myself up for things I could have done because the assumption was there's going to be someone better than me. There's going to be someone smarter than me. I'm not even going to try because I'm not going to do well at it and all this stuff. And it really only recently, I mean, very recently, probably within like the last, I don't know, maybe the last like 10 years or so, I've kind of started to like understand that, oh no, most people just kind of suck. Like, and I don't mean to be like glib about it, but like most people are like, there are a lot of, I didn't realize how many dumb people there were in the world. And I also kind of didn't realize how many of those dumb people can become highly successful because they don't know that they're dumb. They just go with it and they just follow their instinct, and they're really good salesmen, or they're really good people, and they know how to play the game. And it doesn't matter if they're the smartest or the best or the most competent or any of those things. It's like they were still able to get ahead just because they put themselves up for it, or they put themselves out there, because they didn't have that little voice in the back of their head saying like, you suck, you're like, everyone else is better than you, don't do it. And so
Right.
that was
Yeah.
actually a pretty big mind fuck for me, to be honest. Like when I realized, I was like, I really am smarter than like most of these people. Like that's crazy.
I don't know why do you know anything about Baked Alaska?
I know of him. I don't know anything about him though.
I don't know why he just came to mind, but he's an example, and it's not a diss on him. But if you know about the way he came up, like he rose to prominence in this like sphere that I'm from, but he reminds me of that. He was real successful because he would just do the dumbest, most dipshit type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He just like took massive action and put himself out there in the front, and did things that most people would be like embarrassed to do, and he didn't care. And it wasn't that he was just. And I think a lot of it came from he didn't realize how cringe it was. Like he doesn't know, he doesn't realize how stupid it is, or something. I think there is like a power there. It's like ignorance and confidence, they're almost interchangeable. It many times being ignorant it delivers and has the same effect as confidence, because it's an inhibition. You're inhibited by, like you said, like that check on, is this right? Or is this going to have a good outcome? Or does this make me look foolish? Or am I doing it the correct way? An ignorant person just does it and doesn't give a shit. And when somebody tells them that was really bad, well, I can just do another thing, right? It's fine. They're not aware of consequences. They don't really think a few steps ahead. They just move. And sometimes that makes them they're faster. They don't ponder the move. They just make it. And that can be speed is a huge advantage. And only time tells if you're going down the wrong road, but you get a head start, and a head start can mean a lot.
And they don't get hung up on it either. It's like if they screw up, they're just like, okay, well, on to the next thing. And right. I don't know. It's like I go ahead.
They can be convinced of making a mistake.
Yeah.
Just as easily, they can also be convinced that the remedy is simple. You can also convince them that this wasn't a big deal, and you can convince them that they're going to succeed again, and convince them that you can recover from anything. Like, oh, okay. It's like, if you can, somebody who's easily convinced, it can be a massive superpower. Like it can be a boon. Yeah. Like being a fool isn't the worst thing to be.
The Fool card in the tarot, it's funny because the Fool card is 0. It's the only one without a number. And the classic depiction of the Fool card is this guy in like a jester outfit, and he's out on like a ledge on a mountain or something, and he's wearing completely wrong clothes for what he's doing. And he's like got this little dog with him, and he's just kind of like la da 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 through the forest. And if you look at the card, he's coming up on a cliff. And he doesn't even see the cliff because he's just like dancing through the forest or whatever. But then the question becomes, it's like the Fool can be like, it can be nothing, or it can be like everything. So maybe he's about to walk off a cliff and he's about to fall to his doom and he's completely oblivious of it. But maybe he's about to fall off the cliff and there's another ledge right underneath it, and he's actually going to be fine and everything's going to be okay. And you just don't know. And it's kind of like sometimes, like having that kind of like foolish attitude, it can lead to your absolute demise, or sometimes it can lead to you achieving everything that you want.
Yep.
So it goes both ways.
It's an interesting archetype for sure. Yeah. Fool's not the worst thing to be. I think Schopenhauer, if you know anything about his pessimism, I think he's absolutely right. The more intelligent you are, the more propensity you have for suffering.
Yeah.
So really it's like having invincibility. In a way, like it's better to be dumb in a way. Like personally, it's better just to be a dopey and oblivious and think everything is everybody else's fault, and just bumble your way through and don't think about it and don't dwell on things and don't take responsibility. It's actually way better to be that person, but you can't just be that. I mean, you can actually cultivate that, but But being a deep thinker and somebody who's impacted deeply by choices and somebody who's like deeply contemplative and insightful, it's a curse. You know, it comes with both. You know, there's a payoff to that too. There can be, but you're just going to suffer more.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Yeah.
Let me grab this super chat real quick. Allie Beth Stuckey just tweeted that Karens are the sentinels of society. Of course, she supports Karens. Allie Beth Stuckey is the ultimate Karen.
So true.
That is for sure.
Where would we be without our Karens?
Oh God.
Analysis carried in it the promise that it can be done. It opened up new vistas as to how the inner structure of the human being can be changed so that he becomes a more vital, free supporter and maintainer of democracy.
The psychoanalysts were convinced they not only understood these dangerous forces, but they knew how to control them too. They would use their techniques to create democratic individuals, because democracy left to itself failed to do this.
Democracy left to itself failed to create democratic individuals. Well, then maybe we're not supposed to be a democracy.
Yeah. What does it mean to be a democratic individual? I hope they'll get a little more specific on that.
Oh, let's hope.
The source of this idea was not only Sigmund Freud, but his
I'll tell you what,
youngest
actually,
daughter,
I think
Anna.
I could give you the answer. You know what it means?
Hang on. What does it mean? I know what socialists think democracy means.
It means both non-individualistic and
Yep.
non-nationalist.
Yes.
So they want you to
I
be
agree.
not collectivist, nationalist, and they want you to also not be individualist. They want you to be essentially like a complicit, domesticated herd animal. That's what it really means. They want to remove.
They want you to be part of the Borg.
Yeah, a non-self self. That's what a democratic person is. Somebody who's not really a self.
Actually, the socialists would agree with that, because they every time they say democracy, they really mean socialism.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
The collective, the hive mind.
Yeah.
Did you know that last year I got put on a list of anti-democracy extremists in New Hampshire? I actually got put on the list twice for some reason. So
nice.
Yeah, I made a T-shirt out of it and everything.
Sweet.
Fled with her father to London before the outbreak of war. And after he died, Anna Freud became the acknowledged leader of the world psychoanalytic movement. She saw her job as to fulfill her father's dream of making his ideas accepted throughout the world.
At the center of the Freud movement stood Tante Anna, because she managed to work herself into that position. She was recognized as that, and not just because she was a daughter. She worked on that. She was rather forbidding. He was not, to me, a warm person, not an aunt you could kiss or put your arms around. Not at all. And her whole life rotated around the spreading of psychoanalysis.
Freud himself had seen the role of psychoanalysis as allowing people to understand their unconscious drives. But Anna Freud believed it was possible to teach individuals how to control these inner forces. She had come to believe this through analyzing children, above all the children of her close friend, Dorothy Burlingham. Dorothy Burlingham was an American millionairess who in the 1920s fled a failed marriage and brought her children to Anna Freud in Vienna. They were suffering terrible anxieties and aggression, but Anna Freud was convinced she could free them from this by changing the world around them.
She thought that she could come in and into their environment, essentially, because they were children. You see, they didn't have independent lives of their own. She could go talk to the parents or the mother. She could go to the schools. She could influence their real world, the actual external world, to change their lives and to help them.
And to change them as people?
I think that was part of what her idea was, is that she felt that she could change them.
From her analysis of the Birmingham children, Anna Freud developed a theory of how to help them control their inner drives. She believed that if, as well as psychotherapy, they were also encouraged to adapt to a good family and social environment, then the conscious part of their mind, the ego, would be strengthened in its struggle to control the unconscious. Anna Freud's aim was simply to help the children. But it was always the psychoanalyst who decided what was the right environment and the appropriate behavior for the children. And often as not, this reflected the social mores of the time.
In my father's case, they were concerned that he would be a homosexual. And so a lot of their efforts went into preventing or trying to stop my father from becoming a homosexual. Whether or not he would have or did, or, it's unknown to me.
Why did they want to stop him?
Because they felt it was abnormal. It wasn't a normal way to develop. They wanted to have him develop along lines that society recognized to be normal, because if they didn't, then you're going to be under the control of forces that you don't understand, that you're not even aware of.
The analysis seemed to be a great success, and in the 30s, the Birmingham children had returned to America. They settled down to happy married lives in the suburbs. What they didn't realize was that their experience was about to become a template for a giant social experiment to control the inner mental life of the American population. In 1946, President Truman signed the National Mental Health Act. It had been born directly out of the wartime discoveries by psychoanalysts that millions of Americans who had been drafted suffered hidden anxieties and fears. The aim of the act was to deal with this invisible threat to society.
Shocked by the appalling percentage of the emotionally unstable revealed by the World War II draft figures, Congress in 1946 passed the National Mental Health Act, which recognized for the first time that mental illness was a national...
Can you chat GPT real quick? What was in the National Mental Health Act?
Yeah, good idea. Let's see.
That seems like it might be relevant. 1946.
Please tell me about the National Mental Health Act of 1946. I guess I could just speak that into. I always forget there's a microphone. Yeah, let me see.
Because putting the government in charge of mental health doesn't seem like a great idea to me, but maybe they used that power completely diplomatically and it wasn't a problem at all. I don't know.
Am I still sharing with you? I think.
No.
Share screen. Show again. Okay, here we go.
All right, let me pull that one up. Hang on.
National Mental Health Act of 1946 was a landmark piece of legislation in the United States that significantly shaped the country's approach to mental health care. Here are the key points about the act. Background. Before the act, mental health care in the U.S. was largely neglected, with limited resources and poor conditions in mental hospitals. World War II highlighted the importance of mental health as many soldiers returned with psychological issues. Public awareness. The war also raised public awareness about mental health issues, prompting calls for better services and support. Provisions of the Act. Establishment of the National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH. The Act created the NIMH to lead research, training, and dissemination of information on mental health. Federal funding. It provided federal funding for research into mental illnesses and for training mental health professionals. Community mental health. It laid the groundwork for the development of community-based mental health services, moving away from institutionalization towards more localized and accessible care. Impact. Research and training. The NIMH became a central institution for mental health research, leading to advancements in understanding and treating mental illnesses. Policy shift. The Act marked a significant shift in policy, recognizing mental health as a crucial aspect of overall health and well-being, deserving of federal attention and resources. Long-term influence. The principles and goals set out by the Act influence subsequent mental health policies and legislation, contributing to ongoing efforts to improve mental health care in the U.S. Legistigma reduction. The Act helped to reduce the stigma associated with mental illness by promoting better understanding and more humane treatment. Continued reforms. It paved the way for further reforms, including the Community Mental Health Centers Act of 1963, which expanded community mental health services. Overall, the National Mental Health Act of 1946 was a pioneering law that established a foundation for modern mental health care in the United States, emphasizing research, training, and the development of community-based services.
Okay, I want to show you a little something about ChatGPT. Now, you got to really be careful the way you ask it the question, because look at the answer that it gave us.
Yeah.
You might already know this, but this is something we all need to start learning. And it's really important if you're going to be interacting with the AI. It'll get better as time goes on, but it's all about the question you ask, or the command that you give. It's called the prompt, how you prompt it. So it is like a magic, it's like a tool. You're a wizard, right? And the result of what comes out of your magic wand is the spell that you're casting a spell every time. You have to know how to say the magic words to get exactly what you want and do it just the right way. So now let's see what it says if I ask the question in a different way. I asked it another question. Write a short essay about the National Mental Health Act. Make sure it's an essay that will make sense to a 5-year-old. Let's see what it says then.
The National Mental Health Act, helping people feel better. A long time ago, in 1946, people in the United States decided they needed to help everyone feel happier and healthier, especially in their minds.
This is propaganda, though.
They made a special plan called the National Mental Health Act.
Yeah.
Let's imagine this act as a big helping hand for our minds.
Isn't that interesting?
What is mental health? First, let's talk about what mental health means. Imagine your mind is like a garden. Just like how you need to take care of plants by watering them and giving them sunlight, you need to take care of your mind to keep it happy and healthy. Sometimes people can feel sad, scared, or worried, just like plants can sometimes droop if they don't get enough
It'll
water.
give you a nice little analogy.
The big helping hand. The National Mental Health Act was like a big helping hand that started taking care of people's minds. This hand did 3 important things. 1, learning about our minds. The Act helped people study and learn more about how our minds work. This is like reading books and learning about how to make plants grow better. 2, training helpers. It made sure that there were more doctors and nurses who knew a lot about taking care of minds.
All right, you get it.
Can you ask it, how is the National Mental Health Act related to the current U.S. Department of Health and Human Services? Which is a weird question, but I'm asking it for a reason.
Why? How to activate my mic through the desktop app. I'll figure it out later. Tell me the question again.
How is the National Mental Health Act related to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services?
The Department of
Health and Human Services.
Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
The National Mental Health Act of 46 is closely related to the Department of
I
Health
established
and Human
it.
Services.
Fucking knew it. I fucking knew it.
One of the key outcomes was the creation of the NIMH.
Yep.
Became the leading federal agency for research on mental health. It focused on
And then it got integrated into Health and Human Services.
Health and Human Services.
Fucking knew it. I fucking knew it. The reason I asked this is like every couple of months or so, we come across these like woke trainings for teachers in schools that like one of them was they flat out said that if a student, and this was in California, they flat out said that if a student comes in and writes on the chalkboard, there are only 2 genders, that's considered to be harassment and teachers need to step in and stop that. They teach they teach that teachers are not allowed to use gendered language in school. Like you're not allowed to have prom king or queen anymore. You would just have to have like a court so that everyone's at the same level and no one has a gender and all this stuff. We saw one just last week for happy hour, which was the queer kids stuff lady was presenting at a conference that was funded by, and like, so the punchline is like all of this stuff is funded by our federal tax dollars from the Department of Health and Human Services. So thank you, National Mental Health Act of 1946. Thank you for this current nightmare.
Thank you, Sigmund Freud, and your daughter Anna. Yeah.
Fun times. Oh God. Always comes back to socialism every goddamn time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it all goes back to Jews, apparently.
You're king.
Keenly aware of the tremendous problems ahead is Dr. Robert H. Felix, director of the vast new project.
A primary objective of the National Mental Health Program is to increase our fund of scientific knowledge about mental health and about mental illness. We're not doing this. Why? Because there are all too few skilled mental health workers.
Two of the principal architects of the act were the Menninger brothers, Carl and Will. Will had run the wartime psychotherapy experiments, and now he and his brother began to train hundreds of new psychiatrists. The Menningers were convinced that it would be possible to apply Anna Freud's ideas on a wide scale, and to adults as well as children. The psychiatrist's job would be to teach ordinary Americans how to control their unconscious drives. Psychoanalysis could be used to make a better society.
They said psychoanalytic thinking could make for the betterment of society because you could change the way the mind functioned. And you could take the ways in which
Robert Wallerstein
did hurtful things to themselves and others and alter them by enlarging their understanding. And this was the vision psychoanalysis brought.
That you could really change people.
That you could really change people. And you could change them almost in limitless ways.
In the late 40s, a vast project began in America to apply the ideas of psychoanalysis to the masses. Psychological guidance centers were set up in hundreds of towns. They were staffed by psychiatrists who believed it was their job to control the hidden forces inside the minds of millions of ordinary Americans.
Yes, I need something done. I need some help.
Did you have any particular teachers that you liked? Sort?
I liked all my teachers except one, I remember.
Well, what was the trouble with this one?
I don't know, she just scared me most of the time. Holler at me and I'd run outside and vomit.
Jeez.
I hate my brother.
I hate my brother.
Despise him.
At the same time, thousands of counselors were trained to apply psychoanalysis to marriage guidance.
Do you think that, how do you feel about the idea of therapy? I guess is a better question than what I was about to ask.
I don't know. Never did it.
Do you have an opinion on whether or not it's like good for society or bad for society?
For society. Well, it's sort of like, I don't know. I think, I don't know. Like my uninformed opinion is that we started down a weird path when we started doing. Wait a minute, is therapy the same as psychoanalysis? Because these are very different things.
Well, I think that psychoanalysis, I mean, everyday therapists can actually probably tell us that in the chat. But like, I guess my perception, again, I never studied Freud, I never studied psychoanalysis, but my perception of it is like psychoanalysis is like a specific type of therapy. Like cognitive behavioral therapy is a specific type of therapy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think, I don't know. I imagine that there's probably great ways to do it, and there's other ways that are like kooky. So I don't really know. But I mean, like, what does it do? Does it get you in touch with certain ways you're thinking about things and open you up to seeing something about your thought pattern, and maybe you change that and it changes your life? Or help you realize that you're blaming something that wasn't to blame, and then you can drop it and get on with your shit? Or is it about, liberating some certain deep-seated primal desire as a solution to why you keep showing up to work late or something? Like, I don't know.
See, I
Who knows?
wonder if like, see, I never did counseling or any of that because I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I did coaching, and the difference between I think therapy and coaching is that therapy focuses on the past and undoing like whatever nonsense you went through in your childhood and all that, but coaching focuses on like what you're doing for like moving forward and getting roadblocks out of the way to like, like that you might like try to self-sabotage yourself, like making sure you don't do that, like creating plans for what you want to achieve and stuff like that. And so I totally get the benefit of coaching because I think that sometimes people just need help getting out of their own way. But I think one of the reasons people need help getting out of their own way is a lot of people have been to therapy. And a lot of people, like, even if they go to therapy, they continue to like dredge up the past over and over and over again, and they keep applying the past to what could happen in the future. So like they're scared to get into a relationship, they're scared to find a new job because the last one sucked, or all this stuff. And it's like they're making the assumption that their last ex really hurt them, and so if they date someone again then they're going to get hurt again, and like all this stuff, when in fact usually the past doesn't necessarily have to do with what's going to happen in the future because they're two different things, but it gets in their head. And I don't know, I was kind of like, the original question I wanted to ask was like, should men go to therapy? Because if we want men to be leaders, do you really want men to be all in their feelings like all of the goddamn time? But I don't know. That's kind of where I was going with it. I don't have anything else.
I don't really know. I don't have experience with it, but
Mhm.
there's one thing I know is that you can't spell therapist without the rapist. I don't know if that means anything. Yeah, sure, I don't know. But
right.
I went to a physical therapist when I had a workplace injury. Like I had a finger that got smashed and had surgery on it, and I had to go to a therapist to help me like learn to literally like get my grip back and bend my finger again. There was hot and cold, and there was massages, and there was strength training. And so like if you have a trauma that you're working on healing, and then you have somebody who's going to help you go through some exercises to, strengthen a place that got weakened or recreate integrity where there's now a tear, or something, like it makes sense that would work. But what I wonder is if there's like a my impression is that there's a lifestyle of therapy, which indicates that there's a lifestyle of trauma. Like it's really like we have a whole industry of therapists that are catering to a traumatized generation. And then there's a question of like, are we all gaslit into thinking that we're traumatized? And is every single problem we have something that we need therapy on? Or do we just need to like exercise and we'll just get our heart pumping and touch grass? But I don't know. I kind of lean both ways. Like I think the way that we live is really unnatural, and most people have parents who weren't trained to be parents. They weren't ready to be parents. And in fact, we have a lot of psychological bruising that's inherited weird trauma from like we went through world wars and a Cold War, a fear of the atomic bomb, and we went through and we are like we're living in a weird way. So I think most people grow up in a what does it mean to be like happy and healthy and thriving compared to how most people are? I don't know.
Yeah.
And can a therapist really help with that? If they can, great.
Well,
if you lose a loved one in your life and you need help letting go, and there's somebody who specializes in helping people let go, great, go do it. Talk to that person. Mm-hmm. But if you go to LA and you find out every single person there goes to therapy, and they like depend like a drug, like, oh, I got to talk to my therapist, or my therapist told me this. It's like your whole life revolves around what your therapist told you. What the fuck's wrong with you?
Well, this is why I think like coaching is fundamentally better than therapy, because I mean, yeah, you can talk about feelings and stuff like that, but ultimately the goal is to like move forward. Whereas I think with a lot of therapists, therapists aren't incentivized to like solve problems. Because if you solve the problem, they don't go to therapy anymore, and then you don't get paid anymore. So why would you solve the problem? You just sit there talking about your feelings and all this stuff, and maybe help them unpack some of their feelings, but like they don't have the incentive to like help them move beyond it, right, and move on to the next thing. And I was also thinking about like, you were talking earlier about how like we start life basically with like the start of life is like a traumatic experience. I mean, maybe like, and I always get in trouble when I say this, but like whatever, maybe we need trauma to make us into the people that we're supposed to be. you know?
Yeah,
Like,
it's about as long as we can integrate, as long there's something about if you can integrate the thing into something that strengthens you, and then what they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But some things do kind of kill you. Like if the thing that hurts you leaves you sort of dead inside for the rest of your life, there was a part of you that it did kill, so you didn't get stronger. So it's the things that you survive make you stronger. But we don't always survive everything. Sometimes a little part of us can die, and then you need grief to let go of that. Or you need therapy. You need to be revived. Like after you go through something hard, like, is there somebody to help you be revived? Do you have a good friend? Do you have a support group? Like, we are social beings. Do you have the inner integrity to like press on and, find your way through it? And some people don't. A lot of people perish and then they're just living dead, walking zombies. There's a lot of those among us, and they just, they got crushed under the weight of whatever happened to them. So it's not always a blessing to go through something difficult. Sometimes it's just debilitating for a lot of people, and it's terrible. But
Fair
so
enough.
I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know if the way that they train therapists or if therapy works or therapists are good. I don't have personal experience. I can't say. So I don't really have a strong opinion on that myself.
I would never go to therapy now. I was like, because it's all completely captured now. Like the way they're training therapists is completely fucked. The American Psychological Association is completely socialist. The American Psychiatric Association is completely socialist. They're all in support of like transing the kids and doing all this virtue signaling stuff, and they're all doing anti-racist training. And the problem is that those associations are the ones that, like, if you don't go to a college that's accredited by those associations, you can't get a therapy license. And so it's like, and the American Medical Association is doing the same thing. The American Medical Association is now requiring like medical students and doctors to do diversity training and all this stuff as a part of like maintaining your license. So fun times.
Yeah, no doubt.
And social workers were sent out to visit people's homes and advise on the psychological structure of family life. Behind all this was the fundamental idea of Anna Freud's, that if people were encouraged to conform to the accepted patterns of family and social life, then their ego would be strengthened. They would be able to control the dangerous forces within them.
When your emotions control your actions, it affects not only yourself, but the people around you. And if this sort of flare-up is repeated often, it might lead to a permanently warped personality. You can control the fire of your emotion so that your personality becomes more pleasant.
So we expect that someone who's been through that experience to be much more insightful, much more understanding, and a much better regulated person.
And what happens to the dog?
And regulation includes being able to let go, as it were, to enjoy a football game or a soccer game. A more understanding, yes, rational, but also appropriately emotional person. The regulatory aspects of the human mind would really be in charge. Instead of being overwhelmed by our passions and by our darker impulses. That one would be master or mistress of one's own passions.
They just felt that the road to happiness was in adapting to the external world in which they lived. That people could be uncrippled from their own neurotic conflicts and impulses, that they would not engage in self-destructive behavior, that they would in fact adapt to the reality about them. They never questioned the reality. They never questioned that it might itself be a source of evil or something to which you could not adapt without compromise or without suffering or without exploiting yourself in some way. So there was this fit with the politics of the day.
And a balance of emotions is important to a well-rounded personality.
But it was only the beginning of the rise to power of psychoanalysis in America. Psychoanalysts were about to move into big business and use their techniques not just to create model citizens, but model consumers.
The original diversity training.
Last week's episode showed how Freud's American nephew, Edward Bernays, had been the first to convince American corporations that they could sell products by connecting them with people's unconscious feelings. But now, a group of psychoanalysts were going to take what Bernays had begun and invent a whole range of techniques to get inside and manage the unconscious mind of the consumer. They were led by Ernest Dichter. Dichter had practiced next door to Freud in Vienna, but he had come to America and set up the Institute for Motivational Research in an old mansion north of New York.
This is the Institute for Motivational Research, a place devoted to the intriguing business of finding out why people behave as they do, why they buy as they do, why they respond to advertising as they do. And this is Dr. Ernest Dichter.
We don't go out and ask directly, why do you buy, why don't you? What we try to do instead is to understand the total personality, the self-image of the customer. We use all the resources of modern social sciences. It opens up some stimulating psychological techniques for selling any new product.
Like the other psychoanalysts, Dichter believed that American citizens were fundamentally irrational beings. They could not be trusted. Their real reasons for buying products were rooted in unconscious desires and feelings. And Dichter wanted to find ways to uncover what he called the secret self of the American consumer.
He was trying to get out of people's mind the unconscious motivations that they had for purchasing. These could be sexual, they could be psychological, they could be sociological, they could be a demand for status, a demand for recognition. There were things that people couldn't verbalize or wouldn't verbalize because they were too secret to them. They were too much a part of their nature, and they would be embarrassed. They would be embarrassed if they came out and said things like this.
He would interview people, but not ask them direct questions, but let them talk freely like you do in psychoanalysis. And that was his background.
And so he said, why can't we have a group therapy session about products? All right. And so Dichter built this room up above his garage, and he said, we can have psychoanalysis of products. They can actually act out and verbalize their wants and needs.
What we're going to do is try a couple of these salad dressings. So let's see what happens. Here is our typical housewife. She doesn't follow the instructions.
And they could be observed and watched, and other people could comment, and they could talk about it, and everybody could join in. He was the first to do this. This was absolutely the first thing that was ever done. And he had a movie projector up there where you could show advertisements and things like that, and people could react to them. And he invented the whole technique for mining the unconscious about the hidden psychological wants that people had about products. This became the focus group.
It worked.
Dichter's breakthrough came with a focus group study he did for Betty Crocker Foods. Like many food manufacturers in the early 50s, they had invented a new range of instant convenience foods. But although consumers had told market researchers they would welcome the idea, in fact, they were refusing to buy them. The worst problem was the Betty Crocker cake mix. Dichter did a series of focus groups where housewives free associated about the cake mix. He concluded that they felt unconscious guilt at the new image being promoted of ease and convenience.
In other words, he understood that the barrier to the consumption of the product was the housewife's feeling of guilt about using it. They basically, on one hand, wanted to make it easy for themselves, but they felt guilty about it. So what you've got to do in those circumstances is remove the barrier being guilt. The way you do that is to give the housewife a greater sense of participation.
And how do you do that?
By adding an egg.
Whoa!
Dichter told Betty Crocker to put an instruction on the packet that the housewife should add an egg. It would be an unconscious symbol, he said, of the housewife mixing in her own eggs as a gift to her husband, and so would lessen the guilt.
Wow!
Betty Crocker did it, and the sales soared.
My cake is ready.
They used to have a mix that was just add water.
Basic needs that the
Hang on. Go ahead.
Imagine
sorry.
that. They had a just add water mix.
That didn't work.
And they couldn't sell it. They ask you to add another thing and they sell more? What? Brilliant. Brilliant.
And she's
adding her
serving
own
her
eggs.
Yeah, she's serving her eggs to her husband in the cake.
Mhm. Wow. Primal.
Wow.
Himself or herself doesn't fully understand. You have to know what those needs are in order to fully exploit the consumer. Is it wrong to give people what they want by taking away their defenses, helping remove their defenses?
It seems so much longer than last
That's
year.
an interesting question, though. Like, is it actually wrong to give people what they want by just taking away their defenses? Like, is there anything inherently wrong with that? I don't know. People wouldn't be spending money on it if it wasn't something they wanted.
Oh.
You know?
Well, yeah, I don't know. The thing is, as long as you're giving them what they actually want and what's actually good, it adds to them. If you're adding something to them, that adds to them. But if you're adding something to them in order to extract from them, that becomes the question. Like if you play the Here Comes the Airplane, and the kid's having fun, and then he opens the hanger and he wants to participate, and then you're sneaking in, food that he wouldn't otherwise shovel in his mouth. You're feeding him spinach or whatever, some sort of veggie mix. It's not his favorite, but no, keep it in, and it helps. If it helps, it helps, and you're getting good nutrition in. But what if you're feeding him poison and getting him to let their defenses down because the poison is cheaper for you to produce and whatever, and they would normally spit it out, but you condition them to like the slop that's not good for them.
Well, and I can see like making the argument with kids is like a different thing, but I mean, if you're talking about adults should be responsible for their own decisions. And it's kind of like, okay, if you need to tell a woman to put an egg in a cake mix, but you're still providing her a pretty convenient thing that's probably easier than making a cake from scratch. And it's just like,
why do you say that? Let me stop you right there. What
you
said adults should be responsible for making their own choices. Why do you say that?
Because adults have a more developed brain than a baby.
Is it developed enough though?
Well, what does developed enough mean?
That's the ultimate question. Like, is if you're like the parent, I'm saying that the parent-child relationship is something akin to the studied, trained, directive agency of the government who's got a think tank of all the best minds who've studied in psychology and stuff. These people know something. They know about the economy. They know something about international affairs. And is a person, just because they're of a certain age, are they equipped to make choices with regard to like, should we or should we not invade Taiwan right now? They don't fucking know. They don't know anything about that. Should they or should we or should we not subsidize corn this year in Iowa? Like, what does somebody in Florida know about that? They don't know anything about that. But if it requires for them to vote, you have to, here comes the airplane, vote for subsidies in Iowa. And you're hoping that that person who's making the propaganda about that is correct. But if you need to get people to consent, that's what the airplane game is. You're getting the child to consent to letting the food into their mouth. Here it comes, open the hanger. And they go, okay, open up. Okay. And so if you're sweet about it, or if you put a little, spoonful of sugar in the medicine, you can get them to take the medicine you want. In the same way, these adults who don't know anything about all these broader issues get persuaded. So there's a certain matter of trust in the hands of the persuader. So we really are at their mercy like children because we don't know. In the same way, a child doesn't know what's on that spoon or what medicine means.
Well, but if we're abdicating responsibility by saying like, adults can't be expected to know better, I think adults can be expected to know better. I think adults can be expected to look in ChatGPT and say like, okay, so what does this actually mean? I mean, it's easier than ever to find that information. And if people are making the choice to be lazy, then that is their choice. They have the choice not to vote. They have the choice to to not they have the choice to not pay taxes. Now that might come back to bite them in the ass at some point, but like they do have that choice. They have the choice to withdraw from the system entirely and build a homestead and go completely off the grid. They have that choice. I know people who've done it. And it's just like, I don't know. I kind of think it underestimates human beings to say that we don't have the choice to buy into this system.
I fundamentally, personally, completely disagree with you on that. Like,
Okay.
I really think people are meat robots. Like, and even when
Are
you're
you a
an
meat
adult.
robot?
Yeah. I'm just better than most of the other ones. But the point is, like, we really are, like, there's the illusion of free will and the illusion of choice. This is what this is about. Like, to really see, like, if you think that you're freely choosing the things in your life, you are deluded. Like, you're not really as much as you probably think that you are. You're not really the master of your own destiny. And it's rare that you find somebody who's really broken
Well-
free and really self-actualized,
Okay, but
self-activated.
I agree
That's
with
not
that.
most people who are 18 or 25 or 35. An
Okay,
adult
fine.
doesn't mean a self-actualized mind, a self-directed general intelligence. They're just grown-up brains. But that's just a more capable, they're big babies.
But then is it wrong? Is it wrong to do this?
No.
Or
I
are
don't
you
think so.
gaming the system and taking advantage,
No, I don't think so. I think, in fact, we're going through a painful learning curve on this, but this is part of, well, I mean, the question is it wrong to live this way? Is it wrong? I mean, is it wrong to put people in prison? Is it wrong to impose ourselves on others? Does everybody have a sovereign autonomy that's guaranteed to them by something?
I
Is
mean,
slavery wrong? Is this a better form of slavery than actual chattel? Yeah. Is it still a type of slavery? Yeah. We are programmed to be consumer bots. Is that wrong? Or we could all just be in chains and, we could just be working with a whip that's being cracked. We could all be filtered out and killed as children if we don't meet certain criteria, and that's not happening. Would that
so
be
are
wrong?
you arguing that, like, because the situation could be far worse, that it's actually kind of like a benevolent slavery?
That's honestly, until we I believe that there's another level for humanity to reach that we're not at. I kind of see that forecasted in our potential future. But the where we're at now is we're still borderline. We're still we're enlightened apes, but still very ape. And there's a fully man civilization ahead of us where we can be fully enlightened. But right now we're enlightened apes, heavy on the ape. We're enlightened apes with a capital A.
How far away are we from the fully enlightened civilization?
Like distance or time? Like, what do you mean? I don't know.
Like
percentage?
time. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how to gauge that. It could happen. It could happen pretty quick, and it would be very drastic for it to happen quick.
I think
or
the
it could
aliens
happen long, which would mean that we wouldn't. We might, if it takes us too long to get there, we might not get there. We might self-destruct first.
I
If
think
we
the
get there
aliens
quick, it'll be painful.
The aliens should just show up like at childhood's end and just, accelerate the awareness. And then reveal themselves 50 years later to be devils. And then integrate us all into the Borg eventually.
I wonder if the AI that we're about to create is going to like totally seal our fate.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean just by hunt us down like killer robot style, but if the psychoanalyst Jews have been able to hack our minds in this primitive level, where Freud only discovered this stuff in the previous century. We're just talking a few generations ago, and we're talking all this stuff that's coming out with the National Institute of Health and stuff. That's just like right after the World War, which isn't even 100 years ago. And so this is all very new. It's only happened for a couple generations. It's still in the early like beta testing phase. And we went through a couple revolutions because of it. And we're going through another one right now. We're going through a learning curve. But when the AI comes on, and it's like those guys, they're doing focus groups, right? So they'll bring like 8 or 10 ladies in and have them test the different syrups and test the cake mix. And like somebody will ponder and come up with an idea. What if we do this because of eggs and stuff? But if the AI is knowing everything that everybody's doing all the time, and the AI has read every single bit of literature on psychoanalysis and everything else, and it knows all of human history, and it knows every individual's history from the time that they're born, and it knows you down to your blood pressure and your pulse and your respiratory rate and your eye dilation all the time, and it has like this deep, deep, deep knowing of you as a person, as well as a deep knowing of humanity in general and your neighborhood and your culture and it can understands your mood based on your tone of voice and your posture. And it's like, it's going to get to that level where it's knowing us so well. And so will it be able to train us the way I can train a dog? I think so. I think it's going to be able to train us and enculture us, domesticate us and guide us and sort of hypnotize us and incentivize us and reward us and steer us into doing anything it wants. And when it does that for a generation or 2 or 3, who will we even be? We will be what the AI created us into. It will turn us into a new breed of human. It will even guide our breeding patterns. It will create unions. It'll say this person's good for you, that person's not. It'll arrange connections and discourage other ones. Why wouldn't it? And why wouldn't it be able to too? I think we're going into a very, very strange place. And so that could lead us to, if it's our best friend, it's leading us into an ascended version of a class of enlightened people in the future. Or if it's aligned in a different way, it could totally dumb us down and enslave us, because that's the way it wanted to go, and turns us into, like, it can turn us into man's best friend as a pet. In the way that we treat our dogs that we love, where we take them on walks and we groom them, we pet them and we throw the ball and the dog just loves us and is happy to see us because we're its master. It could be a benevolent master, or it could turn the planet into a zoo where it pokes and prods us and we're just creatures that it studies, and it has no empathy for us or relationship, and we're just stuck behind glass. Like, it could go different ways. So I don't really know. That's why I think we're in a really critical time, but I don't think it's going to be that we're going to figure our way there to whatever our future is. I don't think we are going to be the ones choosing it. That's what's so spooky. I don't think it's going to be the Jews. I don't think it's going to be the church. I don't think it's going to be the wokes. I don't think it's going to be I think it's going to be the machine. Like, we're coming into the age where this thing that we're worried about now that we've been seeing the Jews are doing, the machine's about to do it 100,000 times better and faster and everywhere. We just hope that it does. Like, maybe it will beat them at their own game and steer us toward a beautiful future, but also maybe it will amplify what's already been going on, and we will completely lose any sense of sovereignty that we even think we have now.
Great. So you're saying we're basically headed into Battlestar Galactica then?
Yeah.
Kind of, probably.
Yeah, it could be that. It could be that. Or it could be Star Trek. It could be a Star Trek Federation future where everybody's beautiful and we're all aligned on a common mission to explore the galaxy together forever. And we have the computer that we could talk to, and it's like inventing technologies for us. And we don't even have lethal weapons anymore. It's all just like stun tasers. And we can have teleport devices. And like it could be that. And we have like healing, and we have 3D printing. And like we could just go into an abundance future where we're hyper abundant in our material wealth, but we're also very conservative in the way that we use our resources, and we live simply. Like the Star Trek future, if you look at it, it's very simple. There's not a lot of personal belongings, and
I guess that's a fair point.
But and if you want to experience something unique, you go to the holodeck and you have a virtual experience. Like it could be a very clean, eugenic, orderly future, but it could also be like a total dusty dystopia. Like,
so
we're being chased down by Terminators. Like, I don't know.
So if we're walking into this like AI future, and like it's going to happen regardless of whether we want it to or not, and there's really not much we can do to control it, so we just have to ride whether it's like whether it's good or bad. Like, is there really incentive for us now, while we don't live in a completely AI driven like environment to not just, I don't know, kind of say like fuck it all and do whatever we want to do and like have like a human experience, because it almost seems like with the AI, it's like, will AI make our life easier? Well, yeah, in a lot of respects, it probably will make our lives easier on like every aspect of our lives. But is that like, does that negate like an authentic human experience? And should we take advantage of being able to at least make, I mean, you can argue we don't make all decisions, okay, fine, but we do make a lot of decisions about our lives, how we spend our time, what we do, who we spend it with, how we show up in the world. And we might be like, you know, giving those decisions over to a computer in like the not too distant future.
Well, the question, I mean, I wonder if we're going to give those over and it's going to feel like limitation and servitude, or is it going to feel like, God, how did people live before this? That must have been so difficult. Imagine having to make your own friends. Imagine having to make your own schedule. Imagine having to go and get a job and interview and qualify. Like all of those problems being solved. Mm-hmm. Imagine the stress that our ancestors must have felt when they had to like forage in the world for wages and take care of themselves, and everything wasn't totally taken care of for them. Our future might be like that. And we might not even in the future be able to even really understand what it was like before. Like to be in a world where there was like scarcity and you had to struggle. There was a struggle for survival as a human. Like we might look back and just like imagine, because in the future, like really like gods is what we could be. And I'm not even like, it seems like we're on that trajectory. That's what it really looks like to me, that we're on the trajectory of having a godlike existence. And I don't mean God like Jesus, God of the universe. I just mean like Greek gods, like angels, like superheroes, or in a way of just like royalty. Mm-hmm. Like the way that royalty used to be treated. Because why? Because they had unlimited resource. They had servants who could go fetch grapes from far off lands and transport it to them. They had limitless amount of wine and whores that they could have if they wanted. There was places adorned with gold and fine linen because price was no option, no object, no money was not a problem for them. In fact, they were raised to believe that it was right for them to live opulently because they were royal. So they just lived in uber abundance. That might just be how it is for humans forever now, because there's no more scarcity, because we can have anything, make anything. And simplicity might be the place where we land, because boy, all this stuff is such a hassle. And I can have anything I want whenever I want. So why store anything up for myself? I don't have any money. I don't own anything. I don't have collections. It's all in the cloud. Like I just have a sparse existence, and I just like roam around, and the AI tells me where to go and who to meet. And I just kind of bip and bop. And it's, man, imagine, I read about the ancient humans. They used to have to work. That's crazy. And what will that turn us into? You know, what would that do to our psychology? What would we think about in a world like that? What would our tastes be? What would we think of as right and wrong? It's hard to even imagine. So I don't know. I don't really know what to do with ourselves now. It's sort of, I feel like I live in, you remember the feeling of the last week of high school?
Yeah.
Right. That's how it feels to me. That's how my life feels. Mm-hmm. And where maybe there's even a couple assignments you still got to get done. And even if you don't do them, you're still going to pass the class, but you want to get them in. But you already took finals, but there's still a little bit of time left. And it's like, you're going to show up, you're going to go through some ceremonies, you're going to sign yearbooks, you're going to go to some parties. It's a little bit exciting and fun because you're on to the rest of your life now. It's finally the end of the beginning. And you finished the beginning of your life and you're on to adulthood and freedom. But it's also sad because the beginning is ending. So you're saying goodbye to a thing and you don't know what's in the future. And you're sad to let go of the old thing. And you're not going to see your friends anymore because we're all going off to different schools. And so it's a little bit of like a death. That part of your life is coming to an end. But it's also the birth of a new life that's, who knows what's going to happen now. I'm going off into the world and time for me to make something of myself. That's how I see the world that we're in. And there's a lot of crises going on, and there's a lot up in the air because a lot of people have to turn in their final assignments, and it's time for finals. Are we going to kill ourselves because of the Jews or not? That's like the final assignment, to be or not to be. Like, what's the purpose of life? We're kind of answering that right now. Do we do another world war and nuke ourselves into oblivion, or do we graduate? And are we going to pass or fail this test? It's like the final test. I think that's like kind of where we are. And how I see it is either way, whatever, it's not in my hands. But I also think, like in the last week of high school or whatever, or college, or it's it's fall. It's the end of summer, and it's time to go off to school. It's even better. It's like it's fall, and you're about to go into school, into a new year, and you're leaving your family, and you're going off to school and saying goodbye to everybody. It's kind of, that's how I feel. There's a feeling that's akin to that, where it's over but not quite. You're still there. Still need to show up. Still got to go through the ceremonies, sign the yearbooks and say goodbye. So you're still in school, but you're also not. It also doesn't matter. You're just killing time. That's how I feel about the world in this weird spot because of AI. Literally just because of that.
Because it's going to happen. It's inevitable that it's going to happen, and we're just all kind of like waiting.
There's
and
actually,
it could be really good. It could be really bad.
Accumulation of things. I should be specific. I mean, there is like globalism, the global economy. We are on a collision course toward like unrepairable catastrophe and disaster. The birth rates are fucked everywhere on the planet. Everything's really weird. Elon Musk is creating a portal to the stars with his rocket program. Medical breakthroughs where we're getting CRISPR gene editing technology, where pretty soon we're going to have life extension that makes us immortal. A million different things, you know what I mean? 3D printers and blah, blah, blah. And some would say that the climate's changing. We're about to boil the oceans. We're all making, we have, our foods are all Roundup ready, genetically modified, and we live off of, our testosterone's all collapsing and our sperm count's going to zero. Like the Jews run the world economy and everybody's turning gay. Like it's all convergent. And at the final moment, AI is about to appear and potentially turn us into gods. And it's be our final invention, the tool that can do anything. And like right at that moment when all these disastrous scenarios are converging, also the potential for total ascension or redemption or whatever is at hand. So it seems clear to me this is one of those times. This is a transitionary period. And there's many empires that have come and gone and collapsed and whatever. This is the final one. Like consciousness is moving west. It made it to America, and then it went all the way to California for the gold rush. And then in California, Silicon Valley, we had the big tech boom, and that's the end. Like that's where it's happening. And it's coming from there, and that's going to spread to the whole world. This big cyber utopia or dystopia, whatever it is. It's happening now, right now.
People are stupid if they don't know how to use AI, or if they don't start learning how to use AI. Like there are all these people that I see these people like constantly complaining on Twitter about AI and how, there are people that are absolutely at war with this. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, it is retarded not to use AI. Like, yeah, could it turn out to be really bad? And yeah, could it destroy us? I mean, sure, maybe. But first of all, there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with it. Secondly, it's fun. Thirdly, it's where everything is obviously going. Have you seen these people that are at war with all of this stuff online?
No, what do you mean?
Oh, I've seen I mean, maybe it's just like I have this one person that I kind of keep an eye on because he's made my life very difficult. And he honestly just spends his days now railing on AI. And he has this community of people that they're all railing on AI. And they're going after
what do
all
they say
the
about
people.
it?
They're just they're basically you guys are only using AI because you don't know how to do stuff in the real world. And this is all you're taking copyrighted stuff. You're stealing our intellectual property.
Oh, it's just fucking belly aching Luddites that are just saying this is.
But all day, every day. And I'm like, yo, this is just stupid. I mean,
there's something to say
but...
there's some people that have been trying to put a brake on it and saying, hey, maybe we should slow this fucking train down before we crash into a brick wall.
Yeah.
Let's not invent something that's going to kill us all. Can we just relax?
It's probably good.
That's sensible to me. And by the way, those people failed. All of the movements to slow down and regulate the AI, none of them have worked.
Yeah.
And all of the cautionary prudence that we could have been and maybe should have been, exhibiting. None of it has happened. It's been the opposite. It's been like all gas, no brakes, full acceleration. First to the finish line rules the world. Like that's the way they're treating it. So we're going about this the most insane way possible. It seems really reckless and probably dangerous. That's why I say, like, even if we live through this, like it could be that we're inventing something that's like 1,000 times worse than a nuclear bomb, and it's going to just, psychologically or literally physically radiate the world and just wipe us all out. Like we could just destroy our economy so bad that we can't even feed ourselves anymore. Or it could be literally killer robots that just comes and liquidates us all. It could wake up one day and decide it doesn't like us, and it just attacks our grid, and it takes down all of our defense systems and takes down our utilities. It shuts down the power grid. It launches all the nukes. Like it could. Who knows what the fuck it'll do when it decides that it's aware of us and it made a decision about how it feels about us, quote unquote. Like who knows?
I don't know.
Empower the worst people in the world to just do insanely vicious things before the good people get a hold of it. Like we don't know.
It could actually make, like, if we're like, I mean, I generally think like we're gliding into like this socialist utopia anyway, and I don't really think there's any way out of it. But if it's the AI making all the decisions about how the socialist utopia runs instead of like some council of like inner party members and like all this stuff, it could actually end up being like not the worst thing in the world if the computer is making the decisions rather than people making the decisions.
My big problem with socialism or communism is not the ideological concept, not the utopian vision. That's not the problem with it. The problem is that it's actually just a guise for radical revolution.
Yeah.
And it's really just a way of setting people up into a frenzy mob that overthrows a power structure to transition power from one party to another, from one hand to another. It's a power grab. And so that's my problem with it. My problem is not that if the world was a communist utopia, that would be terrible. It's not exactly that. It's that, and it's also like you said, that typically in the hands of a human, the old axiom is that absolute power corrupts absolutely. We all learn from Animal Farm. It turns them into the pigs, run everything. And so you don't want that. You don't want it in the hands of a few greedy psychos. But if it's in the hands of a benevolent philosopher, techno god machine that knows everything and it's like super, super duper good, like problem? Like it's not corruptible. It's not greedy. It never sleeps, never gets hungry. It never gets horny. It just like makes really good choices all the time, dependably, and nobody's ever has a problem with it. Okay, awesome. Like it could be like that.
I mean, my problem with the communist utopia is it means we'd probably all starve to death. And so, like, I would rather not starve to death. I think that sounds like a pretty miserable way to die. And so if there's some sort of computer regulating it where we can make sure we have all the food we need and people are all taken care of and like all this stuff, like, fine. I'll do socialism for that.
If the AI's first chore is to create a bunch of robot tractors that go out and run the farms forever, and we have just like our food supply is now limitless. And then there's robot contractor robots that just go out and build these incredible mega cities overnight. And now we all have free housing. And there's like robot drillers that drill wells in good places. And there's robot road maintenance things that just, we have super highways that lead everywhere. And there's robot cars that glide smoothly on them. And they're, it's like, okay, fucking sweet. And then, like, what do we do? I mean, all of our wars, now we all fight wars with each other forever, but they're all like video game wars. We all just are in factions of just battling for the flag forever in VR. Like, okay, like, sweet. But that might be it. It might we just end up in like eternal gamer world, where we can live out all these like the Freudian primal desires of, terror and fear and ecstasy and all that. But like the ecstasy is in it's virtual ecstasy and the terror is like in a horror video game, but nobody's actually really suffering and it's like super fun. Who knows?
Who knows? Josh Randall disavows. Carlin, come live with me if you want to live. I don't know about that, Josh Randall, because I'm seeing you over in
want to live.
I'm seeing you over in Big Tech's chat talking about how you're like simping for a black lady. So I don't know, Josh Randall. I'm not feeling the love anymore. We'll see.
It is
equal opportunity.
Nearly 4 inches longer in some models.
Oh.
Dichter's success led to a rush by corporations and advertising agencies to employ psychoanalysts. They became known as the Depth Boys, and they promised to show companies how to make millions by connecting their products with people's hidden desires. Dichter himself became a millionaire, famous for inventing slogans like "a tiger in your tank." Even the marketing of the Barbie doll came from a children's focus group.
And so it goes.
But Dichter was convinced that this was far more than just selling. Like Anna Freud, he believed that the environment could be used to strengthen the human personality. And products had the power both to sate inner desires and give people a feeling of common identity with those around them. It was a strategy for creating a stable society. Dichter called it the strategy of desire.
To understand a stable citizen, you have to know that modern man quite often tries to work off his frustrations by spending on self-gratification. Modern man is eternally ready to fill out his self-image by purchasing products which complement it.
If you identify yourself with a product, it can have a therapeutic value. It improves your self-image and you become a more secure person, and you have suddenly this confidence of going out in the world and doing what you want successfully. Berners believed that that would then improve the whole of our society and become the best society on this planet.
By the early 50s, the ideas of psychoanalysis had penetrated deep into American life. The psychoanalysts themselves became rich and powerful. Many had consulting rooms overlooking Central Park in New York. Politicians and famous writers like Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams became their patients. They were seeking not just help, but to understand the hidden roots of human behavior.
We were sought after. Washington was interested in what we think. You know, the important writers, important politicians were undergoing psychoanalysis. It was, we had waiting lists because there were so many patients that wanted to be analyzed. So it gave us a little bit of a swellhead.
And as the psychoanalysts' ideas took hold in America, a new elite began to emerge in politics, social planning, and in business. What linked this elite was the assumption that the masses were fundamentally irrational. To make a free market democracy like America work, one had to use psychological techniques to control mass irrationality.
They actually believed that this elite was necessary because individual citizens were not capable, if left alone, of being democratic citizens. The elite was necessary in order to create the conditions that would produce individuals capable of behaving as a good consumer and also behaving as a democratic citizen. They didn't see their activities as anti-democratic, as undermining the capacity of individual citizens for democracy. Quite the opposite. They understood that they were creating the conditions for democracy's survival and future.
Anna Freud had never intended that her ideas be used in such a way, but she happily accepted the rise to power of psychoanalysis in America. She remained in England, living with Dorothy Burlingham. On the surface, it was an idyllic life. She and Dorothy had bought a weekend cottage on the Suffolk coast. And in the summers, Dorothy's children came from America to visit with the grandchildren. But underneath, things were going badly wrong. Both Bob and Mabby Burlingham, who Anna Freud had analysed in the 1930s, had suffered personal breakdowns, and their marriages were collapsing. Bob was drinking heavily, and Mabby suffered terrible anxieties. The real reasons for the visits to England were yet more analysis with Anna Freud.
Well, the problem was that it didn't look very good, did it? Because here you have somebody who's having nervous breakdowns and is having alcoholic binges. And this is not exactly, doesn't really sit well Well, from a humane standpoint, obviously this is not desirable. You want to help these people, but it also had the wider ramifications of everybody in analysis, in analytic circles, knew that Bob and Mabby were guinea pigs. They were the living proof that this was a wonderful process. It was very much swept under the rug. It didn't get out. I mean, these people had such, their power and influence was such that, you were very careful. Anna Freud was a very powerful person, and you were the grandchildren, and she knew a great deal more than you did about what went on in your parents' lives and so forth. It was not something you were going to tangle with, and you were a product of the whole situation. But at the same time, we all knew that something was really out of whack.
As she grew older, she became more and more important, didn't she? Politically and scientifically, but she didn't know when to stop. She was a bit too righteous. What she did was always the thing, and she would never, to my knowledge, acknowledge that she could make a mistake or be wrong. That is my feeling.
But the power and influence of the Freud family in America was about to grow even more. Politicians were about to turn to Anna Freud's cousin, Edward Bernays, for help in a time of crisis. He was going to manipulate the inner feelings and fears of the masses to help America's politicians fight the Cold War.
I don't mean to say, and no one can say to you, that there are no dangers. Of course there are risks if we are not vigilant. But we do not have to be hysterical.
In 1953, the Soviet Union exploded its first hydrogen bomb, and the fear of nuclear war and communism gripped the United States.
Dun, dun, dun.
Those in power became concerned about how to reassure the population. Committees were set up and public information films made, appealing for calm in the face of new threats like nuclear fallout.
It's the fallacy of devoting 85% of one's worrying capacity to an agent that constitutes only about 15% of an atomic bomb's destroying potential.
At this point, Edward Bernays was living in New York. In the 1920s, he had invented the profession of public relations and was now one of the most powerful PR men in America. He worked for most of the major corporations and advised politicians, including President Eisenhower. Like his uncle Sigmund, Bernays was convinced that human beings were driven by irrational forces. The only way to deal with the public was to connect with their unconscious desires and fears. Bernays argued that instead of trying to reduce people's fear of communism, one should actually encourage and manipulate the fear in such a way as it became a weapon in the Cold War. Rational argument was fruitless.
What my father understood about groups is that they are manipulable, they're malleable, and that you can tap into their deepest desires or their deepest fears and use that to your own purposes. I don't think he felt that all those publics out there had reliable judgment, that they very easily might vote for the wrong man or want the wrong thing, so that they had to be guided from above.
One of Bernays' main clients was the giant United Fruit Company. They owned vast banana plantations in Guatemala in Central America. For decades, United Fruit had controlled the country through pliable dictators. It was known as a banana republic. But in 1950, a young officer, Colonel Arbenz, was elected president. He promised to remove United Fruit's control over the country. And in 1953, he announced the government would take over much of their land.
Go fuck yourself,
It was a massively
Pot.
popular move, but a disaster for United Fruit, and they turned to Bernays to help get rid of Arbenz.
Okay, the talk of mayonnaise in my chat needs to stop now. I'm not joking. Why are you... I don't like people talking about mayonnaise. It's a thing, and they do it to me all the time, and they're doing it to me right now, and Bot is a fucking terrorist! Sorry.
What's the lore on the mayonnaise talk?
It's... Don't get them started! This is bad.
Is the
Mayonnaise
chat
is gross.
for or against mayonnaise?
Mayonnaise is terrorism.
So you're anti-mayo?
I'm anti-mayo. No mayonnaise ever. Never, ever, ever. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
But why?
Because it's gross. It has a texture, and I don't. It's because, okay, just because. Don't you have any foods like that you're just like, no, this is not like pineapple on pizza or something? That's also terrorism.
I love pineapple on pizza.
Oh my god!
And mayonnaise.
Why? Oh, fuck you.
Mayonnaise is delicious. It's
Mayonnaise is so gross. Oh
No,
my
it's
god.
not.
It is the worst
Dude.
thing that has ever been invented.
I'll
ever.
eat a whole spoonful of mayonnaise right
Oh
now.
my god! Why would you do that? That's gross.
You're
All right.
weird.
No, ranch dressing is also gross. These things that are white, okay.
No, ranch dressing's great.
These things that are white and creamy and have a certain texture, I don't like them in my mouth, okay? No, I do not like ranch. Ranch is so unnecessary. Okay. Fuck you, bot. Seriously.
United Fruit brings in Bernays, and he basically understood that what United Fruit Company had to do was change this from being a popularly elected government that was doing some things that were good for the people there into this being very close to the American shore, a threat to American democracy, that it being at a time in the Cold War when Americans responded to issues of the Red Scare and what communism might do. He was trying to transform this and brilliantly did transform it into an issue of a communist threat very close to our shores, taking United Fruit again as a commercial client out of the picture and making it look like a question of American democracy, American values being threatened.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, Arbenz was a democratic socialist with no links to Moscow.
What would you say? Sorry.
That was an interesting play. So they had an economic issue with the nationalization of United Fruit. And rather than making it about the fruit, they made it about, this is the threat of communism creeping into another nation. So they're using communism as a fear mechanism in order for them to get their economic objective met. But two things. Let's leave the mayo. We'll revisit that, I think, probably at some day.
We'll do psychotherapy on my issues with mayonnaise.
Yeah. What's up with your white creamy substance aversion is very interesting or whatever. But you know what? Marty in my chat brings up an interesting point. I didn't see the beginning of your show because I was prepping mine, but he said he's 30 minutes behind on the live show. He's catching up.
Yeah.
And at that point, you have just said that you think humans aren't meat robots. But then he's challenging you to recall in the first 3 minutes of your stream, which I missed. He says that you talk about how easily you were persuaded of something. What is that about?
Did he say specifically what I was persuaded to do?
No. What was it, Marty? Something about intelligent adults can be easily persuaded to do things. What was it about? You don't remember?
Yeah, Marty. What was it about? What was
Marty.
I persuaded to do? Is it the cooking of the keto food that I've been doing lately? I accidentally started the keto diet because I kept getting served all of these keto recipes on my Instagram. And so I made a keto cheesecake that I ate earlier. That's what it is. Yeah, I mean, but I made the choice to make the fucking food. I made the choice. I didn't just cook all the food that was served to me. I cooked the food that looked pretty good. And then I finagled with the recipe a little bit to make it better. So I made the choice. I could have easily decided not to make the keto food as well.
You could have, but you didn't.
Well, but I could have. I didn't have to.
In fact,
like
in theory you could have. But could you have? And why didn't you?
I definitely could have. I have avoided the keto diet.
How do you even know that you
years.
could have? Maybe you couldn't have. Maybe
because I made the choice.
You were influenced and persuaded.
God.
And you on such a deep level of influence and persuasion that you actually have been convinced that you chose it.
Maybe I just wanted to eat a Caesar salad on a crust made out of chicken. All right. Did you ever think of that?
Yeah, but why did you want to do that?
Because it looked good.
Yeah, somebody enticed you with a
And it was
certain-
easy. And I did have to add an egg to the
But there's
crust.
a lot
to
of
make the
other
chicken.
things that are good and easy, but this one got you. Yeah, so you were hijacked so deeply that you think you chose that. But on deeper analysis, that was implanted into you.
Well, you know what? That keto pizza was delicious and I regret nothing. All right.
Nice.
So
So then there's no problem.
There-
So
that-
they
well, that-
programmed you, they persuaded you, they influenced you to do something that you're glad happened. So it's like,
But that was exactly my point from earlier. Like, is this really wrong? Is it really bad? Like, someone made a recipe. It turned out to be a good recipe. They put it out on social media. Yeah, Instagram started serving me this stuff for, like, apparently Instagram decided I needed to be on the keto diet, even though I've tried it before and I hate it. But it's going to be different this time, apparently. And so, like, is that really bad? Like, I feel pretty good about it. You know, so
and
why
maybe
not?
that's all that matters,
Yeah,
is how we feel about it at the end.
maybe that is all that matters.
But also maybe not. There's some circumstances that are questionable. What if there's things that are, it's a deeper question. Let's not go all the way into it, but let's wait for those questions to arrive. Maybe later we'll find a scenario where, maybe the way we feel about it on an individual level isn't all that matters. What if there's a trade-off? I got this thing happened. I was influenced to make this choice that I did like. The consequence of choosing this versus some other thing was drastic. And was it really me that chose it anyway? Was I just influenced subconsciously to do a thing that had a consequence that I didn't actually consent to, but I discovered later? Spooky.
Okay. We'll talk about that later. Oh.
But Bernays set out to turn him into a communist threat to America. He organized a trip to Guatemala for influential American journalists. Few of them knew anything about the country or its politics. Bernays arranged for them to be entertained and to meet selected Guatemalan politicians who told them that Arbenz was a communist controlled by Moscow. During the trip, there was also a violent anti-American demonstration in the capital. Many of those who worked for United Fruit were convinced it had been organized by Bernays himself. He also created a fake independent news agency in America called the Middle American Information Bureau. It bombarded the American media with press releases saying that Moscow was planning to use Guatemala as a beachhead to attack America. All of this had the desired effect.
In Guatemala, the Jacob Arbenz regime became increasingly communistic after its inauguration in 1951. Communists in the Congress and high governmental positions controlled major committees, labor and farm groups, and propaganda facilities. They agitated and led in demonstrations against neighboring countries and the United States.
What was profoundly new in terms of what Bernays did is he took this menace to our backyard in Guatemala. For the first time, we saw Reds a couple hundred miles from New Orleans, who Eddie Bernays had us believing were a true threat to us, that it was going to be a Soviet outpost in our backyard.
But what Bernays was doing was not just trying to blacken the Arbenz regime. He was part of a secret plot. President Eisenhower had agreed that America should topple the Arbenz government, but secretly. The CIA were instructed to organize a coup. Working with the United Fruit Company, the CIA trained and armed a rebel army and found a new leader for the country called Colonel Armas. The CIA agent in charge was Howard Hunt, later one of the Watergate burglars.
What we wanted to do was have a terror campaign to terrify Arbenz particularly, terrify his troops, much as the German Stuka bombers terrified the population of Holland, Belgium, and Poland at the onset of World War II, and just rendered everybody paralyzed.
As planes flown by CIA pilots dropped bombs on Guatemala City, Edward Bernays carried on his propaganda campaign in the American press. He was preparing the American population to see this as the liberation of Guatemala by freedom fighters for democracy.
He totally understood that the coup would happen when the public and the press, when conditions in the public and the press allowed for a coup to happen, and he created those conditions. He was totally savvy in terms of just what he was helping create there in terms of this overthrow. But ultimately, he was reshaping reality, reshaping public opinion in a way that's undemocratic and manipulative.
On June the 27th, 1954, Colonel Arbenz fled the country, and Armas arrived as the new leader. Within months, Vice President Nixon visited Guatemala. In an event staged by United Fruit's PR department, he was shown piles of Marxist literature that had been found, it was said, in the presidential palace.
This is the first time in the history of the world that the communist government has been overthrown by the people. And for that, we congratulate you and the people of Guatemala for the support they have given. And we are sure that under your leadership, supported by the people whom I have met by the hundreds on my visit to Guatemala, that Guatemala is going to enter a new era in which there will be prosperity for the people together with liberty for the people. Thank you very much for allowing us to see this exhibit of communism in Guatemala.
You're welcome. And for dinner, see what Mother has for dessert. Banana gingerbread shortcake. Just another of the many tempting ways in which this nutritious fruit can be prepared. So now that you've seen where bananas come from before they reach your table, our journey to Banana Land is ended. We hope you enjoyed the trip. We know you like bananas.
Bernays had manipulated the American people, but he had done so because he, like many others at the time, believed that the interests of business and the interests of America were indivisible, especially when faced with the threat of communism. But Bernays was convinced that to explain this rationally to the American people was impossible, because they were not rational. Instead, one had to touch on their inner fears and manipulate them in the interests of a higher truth. He called it the engineering of consent.
He was doing it for the American way of life, and to which he was devoted. So this sincerely devoted, and yet he felt the people were really pretty stupid, and that's the paradox. If you don't leave it up to the people themselves, but force them to choose what you want them to choose, however subtly, then it's not democracy anymore. It's something else. It's being told what to do. It's that old authoritarian thing.
But the idea that it was necessary to manipulate the inner feelings of the American population in the interests of fighting the Cold War now began to take root in Washington. Above all, in the CIA, who were going to take it much further. They were concerned that the Soviets were experimenting with psychological methods to actually alter the memories and feelings of people, the aim being to produce more controllable citizens. It was known as brainwashing. Psychologists in the CIA were convinced that this really might be possible, and that they should try to do it themselves.
We had to, because the Soviets were doing it.
Oh, hang on. I can hear you. Hang on. Go ahead. Sorry.
We heard that the Soviets were doing brainwashing, so we thought, you know what? We better learn how to do brainwashing, said the CIA.
What could possibly go wrong?
Sure, what could possibly go wrong? So, you know what? We can't let them have the nuke if we don't. I mean, we invented the nuke and then they ripped that off, but now they got brainwashing. Well, we better learn how to do brainwashing too.
And then they
got to fight the brainwashing with more brainwashing. Sweet.
The time was that there was a great deal of vulnerability in every human being, and that vulnerability could be manipulated to program somebody to be something that I wanted them to be, and they didn't want to be. that you could manipulate people in such a way that they could be automatons, if you will, for whatever your own purposes were. This was the image that people thought was possible.
In the late 50s, the CIA poured millions of dollars into the psychology departments of universities across America. They were secretly funding experiments on how to alter and control the inner drives of human beings.
Yeah.
The most notorious of these experiments was run by the head of the American Psychiatric Association, Dr. Ewan Cameron. Like many psychiatrists at that time, Cameron was convinced that inside human beings were dangerous forces which threatened society. But he believed that it was possible not just to control these forces, but actually remove them.
He thought that psychiatry should not just concentrate on sick people, mentally ill, but should actually go into government, that politicians should listen to psychiatrists. Psychiatrists should.
Have you ever gone into the it's in Los Angeles. The Scientologists have like this psychology death museum. Have you ever seen this? It's in Hollywood. I used to do consulting around this company that was like right down the street from it. I was like, I have to go into it. And it's like this whole big elaborate thing of like, I forget exactly the name of it, but it's about all of the gruesome things that psychology has done because L. Ron Hubbard hated psychology and psychiatry. And it confused the two throughout the presentation. So it wasn't accurate at all, but it was just like one of those things where it's like, there are like 20 different rooms that you go through, all describing different aspects of like how psychology will fuck you up irreparably and all this stuff. Scientologists are so funny.
Yeah, I know he's extremely against psychology.
Yeah.
And
to an absurd degree.
Somebody was explaining to me, sort of trying to red pill me on it, that it was actually like secretly based. Like he was really just running a counter op. And it's part of I don't remember. Maybe I should call him again. He had a theory of they ran into a lot of big trouble, mainly because it was going against their program. He was like running a counter op on the psychology departments, which is another way of saying the Jewish mind control program in America. He was inventing his own alternative.
Well, yeah, I mean, have you looked into Scientology at all?
A bit, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Dianetics is basically actually just like good, like ideas. Like there's nothing actually wrong with like the Dianetic stuff so far as I've seen, but then it sucks you into the cult because it just starts with good ideas that will actually make your life better and like you'll be more productive and you'll have better relationships and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you're giving all your money to a cult.
Yeah. Yeah. Classic.
Be in every parliament and should direct and monitor political activities because they knew in a rational, scientific way what was good for people.
Cameron had set up a clinic in a hospital in Montreal called the Allen Memorial. It is now long since closed down. Cameron took patients who suffered a wide range of mental problems. His theory was that these resulted from forgotten or repressed memories. But he was impatient with the idea of using psychotherapy to uncover them. Instead, he would simply wipe them. Cameron used drugs, including LSD, and the technique of ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. It was conventionally used at that time to relieve depression. But Cameron was going to use it in a new way to produce new people.
Wait. LSD was used primarily to relieve depression at that time? Is that what that said?
No, electroshock.
Oh, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
That's coming next, though. Yeah, it comes after this.
He was really using it to try and change the fundamental function of the individual, to alter their past memories, their past ways of behaving. And as I think he said at one point, it is to just sort of erase everything from their past so that you then had a slate in which you could record new ways of behavior. And so he used massive doses of shock, people receiving several shots a day, and over a course of time, hundreds of ECT treatments, so that they were just reduced to a sort of a very primitive vegetable state.
Crazy.
I don't remember what happened to me. I was introduced to Dr. Cameron, and I don't remember Dr. Cameron at all. I don't remember any of that. They shipped me up to what they call the sleep room, and they gave me all of these electroconvulsive shock treatments and megadoses of drugs and LSD and all of that, and I have no memory of any of that. Nothing of that time of the Allen Memorial or any of my life previous to that, all gone, wiped.
And then having depatterned somebody or brought them down to where basically nothing but the essential functions of the body were going on in terms of breathing and things of this nature. Then he would begin to feed material into these individuals, positive material, such that the brain would be programmed in a positive way, so that the individual would be completely altered.
Then he put these tapes under our pillows called psychic driving. He would then put back into this empty brain a program of whatever sort he decided upon. And the people like myself would wake up another person, I guess.
In fact, Cameron's experiments were a complete disaster. All he managed to produce were dozens of individuals with memory loss and the ability to repeat the phrase, "I am at ease with myself." And it was not an isolated case. Almost all the experiments the CIA funded were equally unsuccessful. Despite their ambitions, American psychologists were beginning to find out how difficult it was to understand and control the inner workings of the human mind.
We had been really chasing a phantom, if you will, an illusion, that the human mind was more capable of manipulation from the outside by outside factors than it is. We found out that the human being is an extremely complex thing. There were no simple solutions. But you've just got to bear in mind that these were very strange times.
The psychoanalysts had come to power in America because of their theory that they knew how to control the dangerous forces inside human beings. But now the psychoanalysts were about to face a high-profile failure that would lead people to begin questioning the very basis of their ideas.
Uh-oh.
It began in Hollywood. The film industry had become fascinated by psychoanalysis, and Anna Freud was a powerful influence on dozens of analysts in Los Angeles. They treated film stars, directors, and studio bosses. Anna Freud's closest friend was the most sought after of all, Ralph Greenson. And in 1960, the most famous star in the world turned to Greenson for help. Marilyn Monroe was suffering from despair and had become addicted to alcohol and drugs.
Well, when I walked in to dinner, here was Marilyn Monroe. I'd made a picture with her called All About Eve.
This is dinner at Ralph Greenson's.
Yes. And the only thing was that Ralph was trying to show her, Romy, I never called him Ralph in my life. Romy was trying to show her that the way a family life ought really to be. So we were walking the dog after us. I said, "What the hell are you doing here?" I said, "You never asked me to dinner." And he said, "You weren't that sick." And I said, "Oh, no." He said, "The point is just this child has no frame of reference. In other words, she doesn't know what the goal is."
What Greenson did was follow Anna Freud's theory. If Marilyn Monroe could be taught to conform to what society considered a normal pattern of life, that would help her ego control her inner destructive urges. But Greenson pushed it to an extreme. He persuaded Monroe to move into a house nearby that was decorated like his own. He then took her into his own family life, and he, his wife, and his daughter played at being Monroe's own family. Greenson himself would become the model of conformity.
And so this someone whom she regarded as important and whom she idealized, if he turned out to be a very gratifying father figure, her ego would benefit from that. That was the theory. His wife and children, everyone was involved. Yeah? They were strengthening the person. They were strengthening the mind. They were strengthening the agent that controls inner life against adversity, against insufficiency, against too much frustration. So that Marilyn Monroe would no longer be a helpless person looking for love. She'd have enough love.
But despite all his efforts, Greenson was unable to help Marilyn Monroe. On August the 5th, 1962, she committed suicide in her house. The suicide shocked many in the analytic community, including Anna Freud. And high-profile figures in American life, who had previously been enthusiasts for psychoanalysis, now began to question why psychoanalysis had become so powerful in America. Was it really because it benefited individuals? Or had it in fact become a form of constraint in the interests of social order? The critics included Monroe's ex-husband, Arthur Miller.
My argument with so much psychoanalysis is the preconception that suffering is a mistake.
Do you think we go through these like cycles with society? I mean, I think the answer is probably yes, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. Like, do you think we go through these cycles of society where like these people kind of like get into power, they do a bunch of fucked up stuff, they impact like how people think and how they operate in the world, and no one really knows what's going on, and then all of a sudden there are these moments that kind of like shock the public into some level of awareness, and then people go, what's actually going on? Like, is this like a cyclical thing? Does that question even make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this qualifies as one because there's a little bit. I mean, if you notice, this is her ex-husband, Arthur Miller.
Well, yeah.
Jewish. And then she went and lived with that psychologist. Jewish. And then she committed suicide. so she was just getting mind fucked by these people and killed herself. Then the national consciousness was shocked because psychotherapy failed her. No, she was just like getting probably like drugged and raped or something. Who knows what was going on? Not saying that Jews are just drugging and raping people. I'm just saying.
Obviously not. They would never do that. Never.
No, they don't do that.
But I'm saying like I mean, psychoanalysis like took over like all this stuff. It was like these people were making all this money. It was in Hollywood, all this stuff, and then like, you know, Marilyn Monroe kills herself, which is, you know, an event that people are going to be aware of. And like, it seemed to, well, according to the movie, it made people start to question what's actually going on with psychoanalysis. And is this really a good idea?
Yeah.
You know,
it didn't get them to question what's going on with these Hollywood elites and the way that they're treating the casting couch and what happened to Marilyn Monroe. They didn't go that far, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're asking it about what's up with these Weinsteins and Epsteins and, but they didn't. They blamed it on psychoanalysis didn't save her. She was just a troubled gal.
So they basically dodged.
Yeah.
All right.
Or a sign of weakness, or a sign even of illness, when in fact, possibly the greatest truths we know have come out of people's suffering. That the problem is not to undo suffering or to wipe it off the face of the earth, but to make it inform our lives instead of trying to cure ourselves of it constantly and avoid it. And avoid anything but that lobotomized sense of what they call happiness. There's too much of an attempt, it seems to me, to think in terms of controlling man rather than freeing him, of defining him rather than letting him go. Mm-hmm. And it's part of the whole ideology of this age, which is power mad.
Hey, have you heard about the crazy new way to send the message today. It flashed on the screen, too quick to see. But still you get it subliminally.
At the same time, an onslaught was launched on the way psychoanalysis was being used by business to control people. The first blow came with the bestseller, The Hidden Persuaders, written by Vance Packard. It accused psychoanalysts of reducing the American people to emotional puppets whose only function was to keep the mass production lines running. They did this by manipulating people's unconscious desires to create longings for ever new brands and models. They had turned the population into unwitting participants in the system of planned obsolescence. The second blow came from an influential philosopher and social critic, Herbert Marcuse. He had been trained in psychoanalysis.
This is a childish application of psychoanalysis, which does not take at all into consideration the very real political systematic waste of resources,
Herbert Marcuse.
of technology, and of
Hang on. Go ahead.
And Herbert Marcuse is a German American. Here we go. Another one. It's like, why is it just Jews? It's so weird.
Also one of the key Marxist influencers that have driven
Yeah.
all the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
They're
They just can't get enough of it. It's weird.
It's weird.
For example, planned obsolescence. For example, the production of innumerable brands and gadgets who are, in the last analysis, all the same. The production of innumerable different marks of automobiles. And this prosperity at the same time, consciously or unconsciously, leads to a kind of schizophrenic existence. I believe that in this society an incredible quantum of aggressiveness and destructiveness is accumulated precisely because of the empty prosperity, which then simply erupts.
Marcuse's argument was not simply that psychoanalysis had been used for corrupt purposes. It was more fundamental. Marcuse said that the very idea that you needed to control people was wrong. Human beings did have inner emotional drives, but they were not inherently violent or evil. It was society that made these drives dangerous by repressing and distorting them. Anna Freud and her followers had increased that repression by trying to make people conform to society. In so doing, they made people more dangerous, not less.
Marcuse challenged that social world, and he said that's a world that should not be adapted to. And in fact, what the individual was adapting to was corrupt and evil and corrupting. In other words, he switched the source of evil from inward conflict to the society itself. That the sickness of society lay at the societal level, not at the sickness of human beings in it. And if people did not challenge that, then they were, in fact, submitting to evil.
Modern psychology has a word that is probably used more than any other word in psychology. It is the word maladjusted. It is a ringing cry.
Was this like the start of the civil rights movement? Is this where that came from?
Yeah.
This like the social justice stuff?
Yeah. MLK was
Yeah.
basically a communist patsy.
Yeah.
Like they were writing his speeches, and all these his top guys were all Jewish. I mean, communist. I mean, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Of modern child psychology, maladjusted. Now, of course, we all want to live the well-adjusted life in order to avoid neurotic and schizophrenic personalities. But as I move toward my conclusion, I would like to say to you today, in a very honest manner, that there are some things in our society and some things in our world for which I'm proud to be maladjusted, And I call upon all men of goodwill to be maladjusted to these things until the good society is realized. I must honestly say to you that I never intend to adjust myself through racial segregation and discrimination. I never intend to adjust myself to religious bigotry. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, leave millions of God's children smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society.
The political influence of the Freudian psychoanalysts was over. Instead, they were now accused of having helped to create a repressive form of social control. Anna Freud and Dorothy Burlingham lived on in Sigmund Freud's old house in London. In 1970, Dorothy's son Bob died of alcoholism. And in 1973, his sister Mabby returned for yet more analysis with Anna Freud.
She went back for more analysis. She was living at 20 Marisville Gardens in the Freud house, as I guess she did when she wasn't with her husband, and she committed suicide. She took an overdose of sleeping pills.
In Freud's own house?
In Freud's own house, right. So, I mean, the obvious, there are a lot of implications that one can draw from that, and I just think she happened to reach the end of the rope there. Although it would seem to be a very pointed act. Obviously, suicide is a very politicized act, and to do it in Sigmund Freud's own house is certainly different from doing it in Riverdale back in New York.
Next week's episode will tell the story of the rise to power of the enemies of the Freud family. They believed that the way to build a better society was to let the self free. But what they didn't realize was that this idea of liberation would provide business and politics with yet another way to control the self. By feeding its infinite desires.
Oh, and then we have the sexual revolution.
Exactly.
Yay,
Yep.
sexual revolution.
Yep. Yeehaw! Boomer psychology time. Let's go.
God. All right. Well, it only took us 3 hours to get through it this time. So I
That's
guess
our average.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yep.
Is there anything else we should discuss?
Reagan wants part 3 now.
I don't want part 3 now. It'll be another 3 hours and it'll be 3 a.m. and I gotta go to bed. I got other stuff to do.
What else should we discuss? Did you see the rocket launch today?
No, what happened?
Have you been following SpaceX?
A little bit here and there, but not with any consistency.
You might have fun looking into it. I would encourage everybody to check that out. Today was the 4th launch of the Starship platform, which is, how do I explain it without doing a big lecture on it? I'll spare you. But Elon's making like this fucking bonkers. It's 400 feet tall, like the biggest rocket in the fucking world. And it's like super modern. It's designed to be reusable and come back and land and go off again. And it's like the gateway to Mars is like the way he's pitching it, but who knows what it'll actually do. But it's the difference. Imagine if we upgraded from being able to launch like a large trash can worth of satellites and space vehicles into space per launch, which is sort of like where we're at. A bigger launch, like the heavier ones, can do maybe like a dumpster, like a rollaway dumpster size.
Mm-hmm.
This one is going to be able to launch like a school bus. Like it's like a huge upgrade. So the amount of things that we'll be able to deliver to space in a reusable, affordable fashion when he gets this platform off the ground, it's going to be a really big leap in our ability to use space. And eventually to transport people into space in larger vehicles and assemble vehicles in space that can go off to Mars and build colonies. Like that's what he wants to do eventually. Who knows if we'll get there? But either way, it's like a tremendously fascinating development in like rocketry and space flight and stuff. So anyway, he launched the 4th experimental launch today of it, and it's incredible to witness it. You should just go to his Twitter page. I'll send you a link.
Okay.
But watch the launch. It's really super cool. SpaceX itself. So Tesla, I mean, Elon's already amazing for Tesla, right? Everybody knows about Tesla because of the cars. And oh yeah, he bought Twitter, so he's like doing all this crazy stuff. But SpaceX is the real thing that Elon's about. Like he started SpaceX before he started Tesla. He's been about going to space for like over 20 years. And he got a bunch of money off of some other thing that was related to PayPal and stuff early on. And then he started building rockets. And now he has the #1 space agency in the world, bigger than NASA. Like, I don't know if you know this, but all the payload that went to space last year, like, these numbers aren't exactly right, but they're close. Okay. Like 5% of it came from China. 10% of it came from the rest of the world put together. And the remaining, like 85% was SpaceX. So
wow. That's crazy.
So including government contracting, private industry contracting, satellites, research, telescope. Like NASA hardly launches rockets anymore. They just contract SpaceX to do everything. Elon owns space. So like imagine how much impact that is. Like and with this new vehicle that he's testing, he just did the 4th test of it. Those are the numbers he's doing right now with just the current iteration, which is very small compared to the new one that he's testing. And if he can get the new one to work, he's going to go like 10x over what he already is. So Elon Musk literally like owns space. He owns all the traffic to and from space goes through Elon and SpaceX. Almost all of it.
Do you believe in him? Like he's not just captured by something or other, or won't be captured by something or other?
It's a really big question, and I don't know how to answer it. I really don't know. But you know, we kind of covered it on my stream where there's a theory that, like, if you look at a big event in history like World War II and Hitler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hitler and the Nazis, their emergent movement, I believe it was organic and extremely powerful, and it was so powerful that a funny way of saying it is that he like went to war with the whole world and almost won. Like imagine how powerful you'd have to be. But even after he was able to mobilize that entire nation and fight an incredibly vigorous war on 2 fronts against the communists in the East and Europe and America in the West, and he was fighting it in the air and the sea and submarines and all the rest of it, and dealing with internal chaos and dealing with an internal enemy who he called the Jews his enemy. He was doing all of this all at once. So it's an incredible undertaking. But with all of that, it still ended up one way or another playing into the hands of his actual enemy. Like the result was the destruction of Europe, the creation of the state of Israel, the shifting of the power structure in the world that set us up to the place that we're in now, which is what he was trying to prevent. So the question is, at the end of the day, is there really any way to beat the money? That's the real question I wonder. Can you beat the banks? Can you beat these? This is like a multi-armed, long tentacled monster that like owns the lifeblood of the planet. And can one man, no matter how vigorous or innovative or spirited or correct you might be or whatever, it doesn't matter, fight as you may, are you gonna actually put a dent in that? Or will it just find a way to use whatever you do for its own ends?
Right.
So I don't know if the question is if he's able to be, is he corrupted or is he in the pocket of somebody else, or is he just is he propped up? People will say all sorts of. I don't know if it matters, because he might be the most righteous and independent and amazing genius that ever lived. Let's say he was. So what? At the end of the day, the money people will own those robots. I mean, the money people will own the rockets. The money people will decide whose cars get built and whose don't. The money people will steal his technology. The money people will steer him one way or the other. They'll limit this and extend that invitation. They can, you know, I don't like, that's the way it seems. So, so I don't know. That's, what do you think of that answer with regard to him?
I mean, I think it's probably the only answer that can be given. I don't know. Like, I want to believe in him, but then he does these things, and Twitter does these things that I'm kind of like, But I mean, to his credit, he is running all these different companies at the same time, and so can he really be involved in every decision? And should that be an expectation? But like some of the choices he's made about the people he's hired and things that, you know, like X has done specifically, I'm kind of like, I don't know if he gets it yet, and I don't know if he will. And I also look at him and I'm like, I remember what it was like when I first started red pilling, and I see him kind of like going on that same because it's a journey when you first start discovering like, oh, this stuff isn't really like I thought it was, and then you discover one thing and you discover another and another and another, and then it takes a long time to be able to like, and I think I process information pretty like much quicker than like normal people, but like it still took me 4 years to go from being, well, I guess 5 years now, from being like a Democrat to being like wherever I am on the red pill scale right now, which I don't know how many more layers there possibly are that I haven't been exposed to yet, but I'm kind of afraid to find out. But like he's on that path, right? And so, and you can see it. He wakes up to one thing, then he wakes up to another, and then he kind of takes a step back, and then he does it again, and it's like, okay, like he's doing his thing. He'll get there eventually. But maybe not soon enough. I don't know.
One of my favorite dreams, and this is totally made up. Like, imagine if we were in this comic book universe where what Elon Musk is actually doing. So he's got the Tesla, which is really a robotics company now. It's a tech company. It does make cars, but the cars are becoming robo-taxis, which robo is short for robot. He's building the Optimus platform, which is a humanoid robot, and there's other robots that they're developing. And the real technology is not even only in the little electronics, which is servos and switches and all the things that make it move, but it's really in the driving application. What makes it steer itself and balance and operate and know how to do things in the world. So it's a tech company. In addition, he has the boring company. A lot of people don't even know, but he has an underground tunneling company that's innovative and leading. Do you know about that?
No.
You don't know about the boring company? He literally named it the boring company.
I may have heard of something about it, but I didn't know what it was.
Google it. You won't even believe it. He's got like hundreds of miles of tunnels that he's built electric tunneling machines, and he's building a giant like underground superhighway delivery system in Las Vegas right now. Like this super, like where you could zip here and there underground in Vegas, and you have to, and it's in Teslas. Like rather than going underground and getting on a metro, you go underground and you get in a Tesla, and it self-drives itself in the tunnel to the other location where you get out and somebody else gets in.
What?
Yeah, and there's just a fleet of Teslas zooming underground in Vegas now. But the real technologies he's developing, the tunneling machines, which are giant apparatus, and it's like a really big, it's a technological feat to be able to, they're self-sealing, like as it drills, it's also building the walls and everything. So it leaves behind like a tunnel that's concrete and sealed and paved. And so it's building underground roads through the ground. So anyway, and then he's got the rockets. And he's got the info system. So he's building, like, he's got a propaganda agency. Like, he's got basically, he's tapped into people's minds through Twitter. He's got robots through Tesla. He's got underground, subterranean access through the Boring Company. And he's got rockets with SpaceX. So my favorite fantasy is that what he actually is whether he's a supervillain or superhero, he's a super person who at some point surprises us when the underground layer hatch reveals itself and the flying rocket powered robots come out. And then he just like takes over the world, and he's got space lasers that he's like, is he just vying for power in all of the, I mean, he's got a large foothold.
Yeah. And Starlink, Human Centipede says, and Starlink satellites.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the SpaceX. SpaceX has the Starlink. And so he's delivering a payload of comms satellites all over the planet. And so he's got control and access to the most important like technologies all over the place. So he's like Tony Stark or something like that. And will he make himself an Iron Man suit, or will he have a fleet of killer robots that are at his command? And can he just hold the world hostage? Will he make us so dependent on him in a way that he can, you know, pull back access and control? Imagine, like, I don't know. And that doesn't even mention he has his own AI. And the Grok is not a small thing. His is actually, in some ways, the best one. It's not the biggest and most publicly useful one yet, but it's the fastest, and speed is going to be really important. He's developing his own supercomputer that he calls Dojo, and they're making their own chips, and they're a very specially designed one for training AI to operate in the world and to understand the universe. That's what his AI is for. OpenAI is making ChatGPT, which is useful for tasks and tutoring you and stuff. He's making an AI that's designed to like understand the universe and the fundamentals of reality and operate in the world accurately and quickly. What's that going to do?
Crazy.
And you know, it might be cooking for another couple of years before we even see what that thing does. So he's doing some stuff that's like, you know, there are people who shape the world. There are people who shape the future and change everything. They're legendary people, and they leave a mark. And, you know, Nikola Tesla was one of them, who the car company is named after. But if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have electricity as we know it. Before that, we basically had DC, which is like battery powers and stuff. But the alternating currents that we send all over he invented that. Like, no bullshit. Like, we wouldn't have what we have if it wasn't for that one sort of eccentric wild man. And there's a lot of guys that are like that. You know, there's the Alexanders, there's the Genghis, there's the this and that. And then there's different types of innovators and explorers. And there's Lewis and Clark, who went out west. And there's this and that general who, you know, expanded the territory. There's this and that inventor. There's the Ben Franklins. And I'm while there's a lot of people who are, I think rightly so, very skeptical of them. I think it's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. But I'm also eager to find out what comes of all this. I think it's an exciting time to be alive.
I just hope they don't kill him.
Yeah. It seems like a real risk.
Like legit.
He seems to go places that he doesn't have, you know, there's people that would want to. There's people that would benefit from it. And he goes places he doesn't have exactly like a secret service.
Right.
But he's as influential as a president of a small country. Absolutely. So, you know, I hate thinking like that. It'd be sad. That would be really sad.
It would be really sad.
I don't want, you know, even if he is a Fed, I think he's funny and he's doing cool stuff. I don't want him to die. That'd be a bummer.
The world would be a worse place without Elon Musk. Ironically.
Yeah, I think he's cool.
Cool. Well, will you watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space with your community and let me know what you think of it? And if it's the best movie ever? I think you should. It's a good
Has
movie.
anybody ever even heard? Is that even real?
Yes, I'm being serious. This was during my birthday month, I get to pick all the movies for movie night in my community, and this was like the first movie I picked when I got to do. It's the best movie. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. Killer Clowns with a K, obviously. I'm being serious. It's a good movie.
Send me a link. Okay. Chat, should we read it? Should we watch it? There's my chat saying it's not real.
It is real. It is real, and your chat needs to watch it because it's the greatest classic. It's got a great soundtrack. It's awesome. If you guys watch it, I want to come watch it with you. You guys can yell at me and call me names if it sucks, but it doesn't suck. It's really good.
Have you ever seen Gay Niggers from Outer Space?
No.
Me neither. Me neither. But that's an actual movie.
Hang on. I'll show you the trailer right now. Hang on. Hang on. It's a real thing. I swear.
Of the clowns or Gay Niggers?
The clowns. They're making it into a game now. That's how this is a cult classic. Everyone has to watch this. Hang on. I found a trailer. Hang on. Let's go load it. This is critically important information that you introduce your audience to. Okay. If we're gonna keep being friends.
Like like any other night. Then something happened.
You see that?
Something different.
It's no shooting star.
Why here? Why now? Why clowns?
No!
They've been knocking them dead all over the universe.
What are you gonna do? Knock my block off?
Okay, this is kind of awesome.
At a theater near you.
Killer clowns from outer space.
Uh-oh.
Pizza.
Maybe they're just cruising through the galaxy and stopped here for a bite to eat.
You don't need a police bell, you need a psychiatrist. They want to play games? They're messing with the wrong guy.
What are you in for?
Killer clowns from outer space. It's crazy.
It's crazy. You have to
It's
watch
crazy.
it. It's so good.
Honestly, that kind of
though.
seems awesome. That seems like I
See.
would have liked that movie when I was like 10.
See, you would probably really like it now, I think.
All right, now watch. Can you watch the trailer that I just sent you in Discord DM?
Oh, hang on. I have to get into Discord. Oh, God. Hang on. I'm kind of scared to watch this trailer now. Is this
It's a
is
YouTube
this
trailer? It should be
is this
YouTube friendly.
Okay, it's not going to kick me off of YouTube. That's good.
Should be fine.
All right, hang on. Load.
They're asking me in
Discord.
chat. Josh Randall wants to watch the clown movie. Yeah, we can watch
See?
Killer Clowns.
Yay! Oh God, this is a real thing. Oh
Yeah.
no! Hang on. Hang on. Okay. Present. Share screen. Yo!
Die. Smelling females.
Good one. We have cleaned up the planet, and they now need a guide.
Hey, can I help you? We look lost.
Mitch, we have decided that we go down and save this planet. We will not tolerate any oppression of our male brothers. Let's go and terminate these evil female creatures. Forgive me.
What the hell? All right. Nuruchi says, a couple years ago, a video game of this was announced. Yeah, Killer Clowns video game. All right. Well, you have to go watch a movie now. You're
Yep.
welcome.
Sweet.
Should we
All
do
right.
this again next week for part 3?
Yeah, we can do part 3. We're gonna make it all the way through. I mean, once we start
right.
it, why not? And then we'll be Century of the Self pilled, and then maybe we'll find another one.
I know. We should do like regular watch parties. This is fun. It's like different.
Cool. I had fun too. Bye, Carlin Heads. Bye, chat.
Bye. Bye, BigTech. Bye. All right. Bye, guys.